All right, let's get it. Drive time. Friday afternoon, 11 minutes past the hour of 2 o'clock. Another rather chilly, cloudy day. Kind of been a cold week for May here in Salt Lake City. Hopefully we'll get a little sunshine over the weekend. Looks like there's going to be rain on Sunday, but as it is, every single day, it's good to have you along for the ride. Spence Checketts behind the mic. That is Porter Larson behind the glass. This program is called The Drive with Spence Checketts. You've got it dialed in to ESPN 700, 92 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Happy Friday to you. Congratulations. You made it. Weekend time. Take a big old deep breath. You showed up all week. You did the things. And now you're rewarded with a weekend. Hopefully you have something fun planned. We have a really weird PGA championship going on at Quail Hollow Golf Club in Charlotte, North Carolina, where this course is causing a lot of problems for some of the best golfers in the world, yet some of the lesser-known players are actually playing really well. So we'll give you an update here. Certainly some heavy hitters in the mix as we have a major championship in the world of professional golf going on. We'll keep you up to date on where Tony Finau is. He is right now he's even, but he's 1 over for today, so he's all the way down, tied for 53rd. With some good company, so is Colin Morikawa, so is Cameron Young, Denny McCarthy, Maverick McNeely. So a lot of good golfers struggling. The projected cut line is 1 over par, and Jordan Spieth, who's having a pretty good day today, is at 2 over par. So unless there's some movement in front of him, Jordan Spieth will not even play the weekend, and of course, Jordan Spieth with an opportunity to capture the Grand Slam, a feat only accomplished by 5 golfers before him. Of course, Rory McIlroy accomplished that earlier this year, getting his green jacket. So, major championship golf going on, a massive, massive basketball game in Midtown Manhattan tonight as the New York Knicks will attempt to close out the Boston Celtics at the world's most famous arena in downtown New York City. So we'll get you ready for that game at 6 o'clock Mountain Time. So right when we say goodnight, it's time for some NBA basketball. A gut check performance for the Denver Nuggets last night, and boy, did they answer the bell. A lot of respect for Jamal Murray, who had his own version of the flu game last night. Didn't look like he was going to go for a minute, but he played, and he played really well. Specifically right out of the gates, of course, Denver's bread is buttered with one Nikola Jokic, and once again, he was great. Denver was able to hold off OKC in the fourth, despite Russell Westbrook looking like he was point shaving when he played. And now we've got a Game 7 on a pretty dramatic NBA weekend, certainly depending on what happens tonight. 1:30 on Sunday Mountain Time on ABC will be the Nuggets and the Thunder. And then we'll advance on to the conference championship round next week. So we got some playoff basketball on the program today. We'll give you the update from the NBA Combine and some rumors that the Jazz are ready to get aggressive. Our own Sarah Todd, friend of the program, on her podcast, which you should listen to, called Unsalvageables. And Sarah is very plugged in. Sarah is one of the few beat writers that actually gets information from the team. They seem to trust her and sometimes utilize her as an outlet for what they want you to know. And she's hearing that the Utah Jazz are ready to make some pretty tough decisions. Who knows what it means? But we'll talk about some of these possibilities with the way the NBA draft settled in. It's actually an interesting thing to consider about what the Utah Jazz could do to move up, to potentially move up to maybe even number 2, where San Antonio is reportedly shopping that pick. And look, let's be honest. I think it's safe to say, like, what do we know about Ryan Smith? We'll talk about this kind of out of the gates for opening tip. Well, we know that he's a bold dude. We know that he is unafraid. You can say what you want about his method. You can say what you want about the lack of direction with the team under his stewardship, but he is a bold dude. And I think it's time to be bold. Be bold and mighty forces will come to your aid, Porter Larson. Write that down, young man.
Will they?
Yeah. Well, that's the idea.
Hopefully. Be
bold and mighty forces will come to your aid.
Who said that?
I heard it on Rushmore, the Wes Anderson movie.
Okay.
Also, Almost Famous. Franz McDormand says it to her kid, be bold and mighty. I'm sure it's a philosopher from ancient Greece or whatever.
I'll look that up.
Are you bold?
Sometimes.
When you are bold, do you find that mighty forces come to your aid?
I guess so. At least generally speaking, why not?
Looks like it's an old philosopher from Germany who said that. So shout out to the Germans on a Friday. We're with you. We stand with you, Germany. You know what? Let's get out of this space.
Except for those 2 times.
Let's just gently move out of the space because we have a lot to do. That's Porter. How's your Friday, young man?
It's gone well. It's a Knicks game day. Nervous, as you mentioned, off air. That's natural. But an elimination game at the Mecca against the Celtics, it's what we are fans for. This is the moment. These are the times that we watch basketball all year round for these moments, as you've talked about on the show. Hopefully, Jazz fans maybe can live vicariously through us for a moment, and we can discuss how we can get back to that as an organization here in Salt Lake City as well. It's kind of a scope we'll look through. But PGA Championship going on, RSL this weekend, whole bunch to get to.
A lot to get to. We have a good guest list for you guys today. Our first guest will be Howard Beck, the hippest NBA beat writer around, followed by Howard. We'll bring in Craig Bowler-Jack, the TV voice of the Utah Jazz, to talk some Jazz. Paul Pugmire for the latest on the PGA Championship. Rory McIlroy makes birdie, and he's now back to even par. Wow. He had 32 on the front 9. So Rory's on fire all of a sudden. Brian Dunseth will preview tomorrow's RSL match, and we'll answer the question, how does RSL, score goals? Or maybe a goal. A goal would be nice. Let's start with a singular goal. One goal for the club tomorrow as it is the Rocky Mountain Cup. Then we're going to move over to Dave McMiniman, one of the celebrity NBA media members we have on the program. So our first guest today, Howard Beck. But before we get to Howard on this Friday afternoon, happy Friday to you. It is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
NBA playoff action rolling along last night in Denver at Ball Arena. An absolute gut check, and the bell was answered by a team that won a championship just a couple of years ago. They decided to move on from their head coach, Michael Malone, and Coach Adelman doing a solid job, but that really was about the frontline players for Denver doing what the frontline players for Denver can do. The problem is they do not have a lot of depth. Julian Strawther provided them with maybe the best game of his young career, certainly in the third and fourth quarter when they needed somebody to make shots. Russell Westbrook entered the game, and I swear he was point shaving. Like 3 straight turnovers, 2 horrible shots, a 3-point shot that barely hit iron. And that swing nearly actually cost Denver the game. And Tim Legler, by the way, Tim Legler might be the best analyst out there right now. It was really interesting to hear him break down those 5 minutes. So Westbrook came in, I think it was the end of the first, early second, when Denver was up double digits. And by the time he was done with his handiwork, the game was essentially tied. And then OKC actually went up and took the lead. It took Denver a minute to kind of recalibrate after Westbrook came in and truly looked like he was trying to get Oklahoma City to win. But last night, Jokic was Jokic. OKC actually adjusted their drop coverage to take away a lot of Jokic's individual offense. He didn't have a ton of looks from 3. He only took 3 3-point shots. He did knock down one of them, but it left a lot of room. And you understand why Mark Dagnall had done that, because Denver's other players outside of Jokic and Murray, really for the most part, have just been unable to hit shots. Michael Porter Jr., at least he showed a pulse last night. He has been nowhere to be found. It was not a great Aaron Gordon game, but Christian Brown finally knocked down some shots. He also had 11 boards. It was a really good Christian Brown game. And like I said, Julian Strawther, that's like a $20 bill in the back pocket of your jeans when you're doing laundry. Career playoff high, 20 minutes, knocked down 3 or 4 threes, had 15 massive points to help Denver hold off OKC. And, it's interesting. We talked to Zach Harper about this yesterday. Game 7s, they rule in so many different ways. And the crazy thing is you just never know what is going to happen. So there's a feel out there that Denver, because of their lack of depth and because of all of the energy they've had to exude to hold off this young, dynamic, fast, athletic OKC team that guards in a way that many teams in pro basketball just don't. There's a feel out there the Game 7 on Sunday could be a 30-point OKC blowout. I'll be really interested to see what Coach Adelman has in store to try to just temper the pace that OKC tries to force you to play with, because Denver can't play that way. They just can't. They don't have the bodies. They don't have the depth. And Jokic is not a guy that can get out in transition. He's a guy that can advance the ball in transition with some incredible passes up the court. But outside of Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown, this is not a team with athletes that can get up and down. Now, Westbrook can provide some of that, but after how embarrassingly bad Westbrook was last night, I just wonder if they're going to use him in just bit moments here or there to get Jamal Murray some rest. Jamal Murray deserves a lot of credit. All the reports were he woke up extremely ill. He was vomiting. He was running a temperature. You could see him on the sideline after they took him out of the first quarter with his head in his towel. There were a couple of plays in the first half where he could not even run back on defense and allowed OKC some runouts and some open threes. But he started the game out, hit some shots, came back into the second half, and did a really good job doing other things even outside of scoring. He had 8 rebounds and 7 assists in addition to his 25 points. So Denver Nuggets, this is a championship team with championship medal, and they're pushing this young OKC team to the brink. As I've talked about with Oklahoma City, my only reservation with them is they do not have a deep playoff run together. And more often than not all the time, but in the ecosystem of NBA basketball, if you're going to win a championship, you've gone to the conference finals a couple of times before, like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. 5 conference finals. They went to 3 conference finals before they sniffed even the NBA finals, and they went to 4 conference finals before they won their championship. OKC won 1 round last year, then they lost to Dallas round 2. So should they go on to win the title, it wouldn't surprise anybody because of their talent and their depth and their coaching, but it would kind of kick the trend aside that you kind of have to have these deep playoff runs before you win the thing. All right, tonight, Madison Square Garden, Midtown Manhattan, the Boston Celtics, sans Jason Tatum, will try to go into the heart of New York City and send this series back to TD Garden on Sunday for Game 7. The New York Knicks are a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under is 210, which honestly seems high. Game 5, without Tatum, was pretty fascinating, and I'll go back to what Joe Mazzulla said pregame, which really caught my attention. You know, as I referenced after the show a couple days ago, rushed home so I could watch the game, and I intentionally recorded the pregame stuff so I could listen to both coaches. And I would encourage you, by the way, always listen to coaches, and certainly the guy we have here, Will Hardy. If you listen to Will's postgame presser, he will give you information. He is a very effective communicator. He comes from the Popovich tree, so he thinks he's funnier than he is. He's not. He's a little snarky, but he will give you information if you're looking to learn about what he's trying to do with the Jazz. And when Mazzulla said we are gutted about what happened with JT, meaning Jason Tatum, however, it opens up a schematic opportunity for us. What he meant after watching the game was simply the ability to get the ball popping and moving left to right, north, south, east, west, in a way that at times with Tatum you don't get because he is a bit of a ball stopper, even though he's awesome. And, you know, in pro basketball, you actually need one, if not two, if not multiple guys that can be ball in hand offense initiators. When the shot clock breaks down, you got to have somebody that can go get theirs or get a shot for other people, and Tatum is great at that. But without Tatum, it was really a situation where they were able to share the basketball. And it was one of the best Jaylen Brown individual playoff games that I'd seen, even though Jaylen Brown is your reigning finals MVP. It'll be interesting to see what Mazzulla does out of the gates with the starting lineup, because if something is not right with Porzingis, I have no idea what's going on with him. He had that weird illness that kept him out of 8 games, I think, in March, then came back and looked okay here or there. But he was so disconnected and not ready to play in Game 5 that Mazzulla just threw Luke Kornet in, and Luke Kornet, you know, just gave him a career playoff game. It was, and it will go down in Celtic lore as the Luke Kornet game. I wonder if Kornet gets the start, because they're going to bring Peyton Pritchard off the bench. He's the reigning 6th man of the year. He initiates a lot of offensive sets, has a change of pace ball and hand guy in their second unit. Even though he played 39 minutes and Kornet played 26, if I had to guess, I think Porzingis goes to the bench, and I would not be surprised if he doesn't play at all. And they put Kornet in there, and that kind of neutralizes the Mitchell Robinson effect. And on the Knicks side of things, this is about one player, in my opinion. This is about Jalen Brunson. And Jalen Brunson tonight has a chance to be a Nick legend, to be the guy in crunch time, the ball in hand offense initiator, to send Boston home and send New York on to their first conference finals since the year 2000. This is on Jalen. I say this all the time. If you're going to be a superstar in the NBA, this is the time of year you get it done. And Jalen has been able to get it done all year long. He's already proven a lot of naysayers completely incorrect, who were a little bit skeptical that the Knicks decided to go in that direction. In Game 5, this is another tip of the cap to Jaylen Brown, whether this was Joe Mazzulla or Jaylen Brown himself. Jaylen Brown said, I've got Brunson, and essentially had him all game long and did a really good job on him, because Brunson is, they list him at 6'1". I don't know that he's even that, to be honest with you. I've met Jalen and seen Jalen a couple of times. He looks like he's maybe 6 feet, and that's with shoes, okay, not without shoes. And Jaylen Brown is all of 6'7", 6'8". Like when he's guarding Jalen Brunson, you can see that discrepancy. Just a much bigger player. And even if it's not Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, a great perimeter defender. Derek White typically is, but Jalen's such a bull. He's been able to handle Derek White in post situations and kind of beat him up a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out tonight, how Tom Thibodeau handles his rotation for a team in Boston that simply is much deeper than what the New York Knicks have to offer. If we're honest, the Knicks are 7 deep. All due respect to Cameron Payne, I hate the Cameron Payne minutes. I cannot stand when he plays. It is Mitchell Robinson and Deuce McBride off the bench, and that's really about it. This is a team that's 7 deep, and Joe Mazzulla can go 8, 9, 10 deep if he wants to, depending on how he handles the Kristaps Porzingis stuff. But massive game tonight in New York City at Madison Square Garden. And that's where we go. Coming up next, Howard Beck is our first guest right out of the gates on a Friday edition of The Drive. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, I got Craig Bolerjack joining us, the TV voice of the Utah Jazz. We'll bump over to Paul Pugmire for some golf as the PGA Championship is going on. Brian Dunseth will preview tomorrow's RSL match. We'll finish things off with Dave McMiniman. We'll bookend the show today with two great NBA writers, two great NBA media members. Orange Crush, because, Knicks. Howard Beck, how clever is that, huh? How impressed are you on this Friday afternoon, sir?
Doing well. You managed to merge Knicks and REM and me. That's phenomenal. Just incredible work on your part.
Thank you, sir. Let's start out with this. The lottery's rigged, okay? We're cheated here in Salt Lake City. What's going on? Jazz fall to 5, Howard, and at the risk of insulting your intelligence, but as you know, we live in a day in society where if your guy doesn't win the election, it was stolen. If your team doesn't win the championship, you got had. And so we got a lot of folks out here that believe the NBA lottery is rigged for teams that don't necessarily need it as bad as we do in Salt Lake. Your thoughts, sir?
Oh, my God. So let's start with this. Belief is not fact. I don't care how strongly you believe something. I don't care how strongly you suspect something. I don't care how strongly you think something seems suspicious. It's not the same as fact. And so if anybody wants to believe, and the fact is, if any of your listeners right now are running around with this belief, I can't talk them out of it. So in some respects, it's pointless for me to lay out any of this, but I will if you want me to. But the fact is, people will believe what they want to believe. But let's make it very, very clear. There is no proof that anybody has. There is no reason to believe this other than suspicion. And suspicion alone, as you have just noted, alluding to some other events of the recent past, including an election, you don't have to prove anything. You can just say it was stolen, an election was stolen, and believe it, and you don't need any proof. So if people want to say that the lottery was fixed and they have no proof and they have nothing but their suspicion, I can't do anything about it. All I can tell you is I've been in the lottery room twice. I was not there this year, but I've been in there for this exact version of the lottery, this procedure where there are all the balls that go in the machine, and there's 1,000 combinations or 1,001 combinations, and there's a guy in the back of the room with his back turned who every, I think, 30 seconds puts his hand up, and that is the signal to the person running the machine to then hit the button that sucks up one of the balls. Like, there's no way to fix this thing, and if there were, it would be a fraudulence of epic proportions. It would involve probably multiple felonies, and everybody who works for the NBA and for Ernst & Young, a global accounting and finance firm, they would be implicated in this. All these people are putting their careers and their lives on the line so that Cooper Flagg can go to Dallas. Come on, people, grow up, get a grip. This is stupid. And the amount of ink and time that has been spilled and spent on it this week is astounding and just foolish. It's wasted. And I'll just close with a couple other quick thoughts on this. When people think it is fixed, is it fixed by the NBA itself, the league office, in which case it's a fraud perpetrated on the 30 owners, the same people who employ Adam Silver, who hire and could fire Adam Silver. If the owners on themselves are in on it, why would they be in on it? Why do the other owners want to reward the idiocy that happened in Dallas this year where they gave away their franchise star? Why do the Memphis Grizzlies and Indiana Pacers and everybody else, why do they want to participate in this? Why are they participating in a fraudulence in felonies to help the Dallas Mavericks get a player who, by the way, by all accounts, is going to be very, very good, but according to scouts I've talked to, they're not absolutely certain he's going to be a superstar. So none of this makes a lick of sense, Spence.
No, it does not. And I think you know me well enough to know where I fall on the entire thing. It's literally called a lottery. And I wonder, I wonder, though, so one of the interesting things that I learned this week is that in 2019, when Commissioner Silver elected to flatten the odds, the vote was 29-1 in favor of doing so. The one dissenting vote was Sam Presti in Oklahoma City, whose point was the best way for cities like Oklahoma City to acquire talent is via the draft. Now, there's a lot of irony 6 years later as we're sitting here watching potentially the most talented team in the league reside in Oklahoma City. But we do live in Salt Lake City, where the best and sometimes only way, not always only way, but sometimes only way to acquire talent is through the draft. So do you like the way the league does this? There's a lot of other ideas, like do you just give every team in the lottery the same odds? All 14 teams have the same odds, and therefore you do away with any sort of tanking. Now, tanking, of course, guarantees nothing. We have 6 lotteries since 2019, and the worst team in the league has never received the number 1 overall pick. And the reality is, and I'll credit Justin Zanuck, Jazz general manager, the Jazz, as far as the lottery odds go, the percentages, the Jazz were most likely to land 4 or 5, okay? So 47% chance at 5, 14% chance at 1. For all the hand wringing and, pearl clutching, the Jazz actually landed where they were most likely to land. But is this the best way to do this, Howard, in your opinion?
So 10 years ago, when we were in the middle of the process era Sixers and a lot of other teams were, not as extreme, but were practicing different versions of tanking, and the NBA had a problem on its hands. Adam Silver hated what was going on, absolutely hated it. And a lot of the owners did too, and a lot of the public did. And it's a really interesting kind of case study in the way we as a public react to things, because 10 years ago, a lot of people were crying out that this system is unfair. You should not be able to game the system, even though the worst record still only got you a 25% chance at the number 1 pick. People didn't like the idea that it incentivized losing, that it perverted the entire enterprise, because if you weren't a good team, then it was too alluring to just be really, really bad for the possibility of getting a great pick. And so that was the consensus opinion out there 10 years ago. And in the wake of this week's lottery, I feel like everybody has flipped around to, well, this system's unfair, and the teams that needed the most help aren't getting it. Well, okay, but yeah, this is the problem. When you go to a strictly reverse order draft, if you had no lottery, then there's ultimate incentive to tank. So you bring in a lottery, and the first lottery was just, however many teams in the hopper with an equal chance. But that wasn't the best system as far as the NBA was concerned. And if we went back to that, then you would have a different trigger point where teams would be opting out of the playoffs and the play-in, saying, well, if I've got as good a chance as the worst team in the league of getting the number 1 pick, I'm better off being the 16th best team in the league rather than the 14th best team. The 14th best, whatever it is. You see my point.
Yeah.
I'd be better off out of the playoffs than in the playoffs. You don't want that either. So it's a quandary. And I don't have any strong beliefs on what is the quote unquote right system, Spence. I don't know that there is a right system. I'm not particularly upset about anything that's happened in this lottery or the last several, but I have no rooting interest, so it's easy for me to say. There are competing objectives here, clearly, and it is a difficult thing to manage. But I would say, to the extent that the league is trying to discourage tanking, and yes, tanking still happens, including in your city. The fact is, when teams keep falling out of the top 3, as has happened a lot since the lottery odds were changed, that is the disincentive to tank, or it should be. If teams don't change their behavior and still say, you know what, I don't care, let's just go for the 14% chance, we'll take our chances, it's still better than only having a 10% or 8% chance, maybe teams will keep doing that in perpetuity. But I think the collected results of the last several years should suggest to teams, don't do this. It's probably not going to pay off. You're better off just trying to be respectable.
Yeah, and I have to wonder whether or not the approach for teams like the Jazz and Washington, I'll throw Charlotte in there, and we could throw a number of other teams in there who threw their hat in the ring after certain dynamics went down, like Wembanyama getting hurt or Embiid and Paul George being shut down. Well, Embiid getting hurt, then Paul George being shut down. Several teams were unserious about winning. The Jazz and Washington, probably the 2 front-facing teams that were unserious all year long. But, the message that Adam Silver and the league sent in 2019 is, if you don't approach this with integrity to put your best foot forward and compete, we don't believe you should be rewarded. And a bunch of articles making the rounds this week that people in the league were actually glad the Jazz and the Wizards did not get the number 1 overall pick and therefore be rewarded for their unserious approach about competing. So do you think we see something different from pretty much everybody? Like, at the very least, don't make up injuries for Lauri Markkanen. And when you get fined, don't then have Walker Kessler shoot 8 threes a night. Like, maybe put your best foot forward and try to compete. Do you think we'll actually see that?
I don't know, Spence. I mean, the very first year of the new format, the new lottery odds, the worst 3 teams, I think, all fell out that year, including your Knicks. Or excuse me, the Knicks fell 2-3, but they were. Yeah, I think they had. Were they the worst team in the league that year?
They were, yes. They were the worst. Yeah.
I think, and they ended up falling to 3, so they missed out on Zion and John Morant, which, looking back, maybe is not the worst thing, but still, in the very first year of the new odds, the team with the worst record did not get the top pick. They fell to 3, and I think Cleveland might have been one of the bottom 3, and they fell back, and and New Orleans jumped up from like 10th or 9th or whatever that year. So right off the bat, there was an indication that, ooh, you know what? This is a risky gambit for teams that are just trying to lose in order to game the system. You can't game the system, and that, again, that should be enough to discourage tanking. But here we are 6 years later, whatever it's been, and it hasn't changed behavior. The Jazz and the Wizards are proof of that. And, the Sixers did a different version of this, right, where they were supposed to be a great team. They, fell apart, and they decided to lean into tanking because they owed a top 6 protected pick to Oklahoma. And so even though they weren't tanking at the same level or for the same purpose, they were tanking to protect the draft pick because they wanted to keep it, and they succeeded, and they even moved up. And you could say, well, that rewarded them. Well, okay, that's a lottery. That's the thing. Like, at some point, the odds don't go according to the odds. That's not the way it works. It's a hopper. It's a bunch of ping pong balls. They're bouncing around. We don't know what's going to happen. There is just luck involved here, including bad luck, if you're the Jazz or the Wizards. So I think it should discourage tanking. It hasn't. I don't know what will change that. I don't know where the league goes from here.
All right, let's move over to teams that are playing basketball. Actually, before we get there, I'll give Kenny Atkinson a lot of credit after the game where Indiana sent the Cavs home. I mean, he acknowledged, this is a team that simply is playing the right way at the right time of year. And he said, they're up here and we're clearly down here. And Rick Carlisle, with a very salient post-game presser himself, he's like, look, we're red hot right now. We're on fire right now. And, I don't know what this means for Cleveland, but it's more of a compliment to Indiana for just the way they fought. And, I like Tyrese Halliburton. I know you've always been very high on him. Where is he in the ecosystem of stars? I don't know, but they have got a deep team with a bunch of perimeter players that really get down and guard you. Your takeaways from Indiana sending Cleveland home?
Yeah, tough for the Cavs. I mean, when you're a 60-plus win team, 64 wins in their case, and you lose in the second round, that's rough. There were some injury issues that contributed to that, but it wasn't entirely that. The Pacers were just better. And, yeah, all the credit in the world to Halliburton and Siakam and Nesmith and Turner and everybody else and Rick Carlisle. I think people thought they were a fluke when they got to the conference finals last year because they, got through some injured teams in a weak East. And this time, I don't think you can knock this at all. Like, this is an accomplishment. This is now a team that's been in back-to-back conference finals. Halliburton's for real. His overall game, it's just so interesting because he doesn't project as the prototypical NBA superstar, right? And he's never really been in the running for MVP. I think he's going to make third-team All-NBA this year. That's my best guess, but we don't know yet. We'll find out, I think, probably next week. But, he doesn't put up monster numbers every night. He does lead the league in assists, or is always near the lead in assists. He's just a guy who's got an incredible amount of swagger and confidence about him. I think that it helps lift up the rest of his team. And, his running mate, the two stars, Halliburton and Siakam, are two guys that I think everybody would look at and go, yeah, really great players, but they don't have a Giannis. They don't have a Luka. They don't have a LeBron or a Steph in their prime. But they beat you up a little bit defensively. Like, they really get after it for a team that wasn't known for their defense. Like, Nesmith and Nembhard really get after you. Turner's obviously a great shot blocker. And they really lock down in the playoffs. And then on offense, the pace is really high. They shoot threes at a high rate. they're the classic ensemble where there is no one who leaps off the page, but collectively they're just really, really good. And they have now, they've sent the Cavs home and sent the Cavs into an offseason where they've got a lot to think about.
We'll stay out east before we end out this way. And, I very much love living here, but today's a day where I miss being home. And I cannot imagine what Midtown Manhattan is going to look, sound, and feel like as the New York Knicks have a chance to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since 2000, where ironically enough, they played the Indiana Pacers, as you know. Howard, I've been talking about this because before Game 5, I made it a point to record the coaches, Mazzulla and Thibodeau, to see what they had to say before the game. And Mazzulla said something that really caught my attention. He said, we're gutted about what happened with JT, Jason Tatum, obviously, but it opens up a schematic opportunity for us. And I went, oh, okay, interesting. And then watching the game, essentially what that meant is Tatum, for all of his brilliance, and I love Jason Tatum, he's a bit of a ball stopper. And he's like the only one kind of on that roster that is. And so the ball was moving. I don't know who the hell Luke Cornett thinks he is, but my goodness, Porzingis is not ready for this. I don't know what's going on with him. So as somebody who's trying to objectively analyze this game, I do certainly believe that the Knicks have an opportunity to get it done at home. As somebody who has been cheering for this team that has let me down ever since I was 10, I am nervous and scared that the Celtics will continue to do what the Celtics are able to do. What do you think happens coming up in just a few hours in Midtown Manhattan?
I'm heading there as soon as we hang up.
That a guy.
I think it's going to be utter mayhem in a good way. Like, it's just going to be bonkers there, which reminds me, I better pack my earplugs because I don't want my I'm too old to start losing my hearing for other purposes. It's been a really interesting series, to say the least. And the Celtics, they're if they lose this thing, there's going to be an off season of just serious navel gazing, and not just because they lost Jason Tatum for the foreseeable future and probably all of next season. It's also just that they kept blowing 20-point leads, and they're clearly the team with the better array of talent and with the championship experience. And they should have never found themselves in this position is certainly one way of looking at this. But all credit to the Knicks for being the team that's always steadier, grittier in fourth quarters, Jalen Brunson in particular. And here we are. It's 3-2, Knicks home game, second chance for them to close it out. They absolutely should, given everything that we know, including the fact that Jason Tatum is not playing, including the fact that Porzingis apparently is still having issues with whatever this viral infection or whatever he had was. They said he wasn't breathing well the other night. Like, they could have used him in a emergency in the second half, but they decided not to. I don't know if you're getting another 7-block Luke Cornett game. But the Celtics, I will say this, and it's the one reason why I think that this is going to be a true battle tonight. I don't know who will win, but Jaylen Brown was the Finals MVP and the Conference Finals MVP last year for a reason. Maybe he's not quite at Tatum's level, but he's just a slight bit below. But he's really capable of doing a lot. And sometimes it simplifies things for NBA teams when you lose your star. It's everybody kind of rallies around if you've still got a star, which they do in Brown. Now it's clear. We've got to ride this guy. And then if that guy, in Jaylen Brown's case, remembers their best principles of basketball, which is like, I've got a lot to carry, but I can't do it alone. I got to make sure to leverage my teammates. I got to move the ball around. I've got to, draw two to the ball and pass. This is the simple, basic basketball principles, right? And you've got guys like Derek White and Drew Holiday and Al Horford who have all been there and done that, and Peyton Pritchard, who was Sixth Man of the Year. Like, you have plenty of talent still. Like, I actually think this is not a knock on the Knicks, but without Tatum, I don't think there's some massive talent gap between these two teams because Jaylen Brown's that good, and because Karl Anthony Towns is that unreliable, and because the Celtics have a bunch of guys who, if they haven't been, all-stars, are at least like right there a cut below it. Like, Drew Holiday could have been he's been an all-star, I think, once. He could have been multiple times. Derek White could have been multiple times. They have that kind of talent, but they've played roles because that's what they needed to do, and that's how they're built. So I think the Celtics have a real chance to win this and send it back to Boston for a Game 7. I think what I would expect is the Knicks to close it out. But I in this postseason, I am through trying to figure out anything.
Yeah, and that's what's made it so fun. I will give you credit, though, and I gave you credit on the show the other day, with a couple of weeks left in the regular season. When OKC started to establish themselves as like historically good with the net and just the simply win-loss record, we would revisit this every week. I'm like, who's keeping Mark Daigneault up at night? And at what point you said we should keep an eye on Minnesota? Now, of course, Stephen goes down, and, for as connected as Boston looked during Game 5 without Tatum, the Warriors are just screwed without Steph. I mean, it changes everything. I was kind of waiting to see a Jimmy Butler from a couple of years ago, playoff Jimmy that carried Miami to the finals. We never really saw that, and I don't know how much of that has to do with the injury Jimmy picked up. I don't know how much of that has to do with all the big, strong wings Minnesota has, but they dispatch the Warriors in 5. What do you make of it?
The Timberwolves, they did start out the season shaky, right? Randall didn't seem to quite fit. DiVincenzo, who, both of those guys came over in the cat trade with the Knicks. DiVincenzo didn't quite seem, the same. I don't know if that was just like, the heartbreak over losing his Villanova buddies, as we've seen in the commercials. It took them a while to get going, but the talent was always there. And like Julius Randle, this as a Knicks fan, like he's a very frustrating player at times. Like high highs and low lows, and he can be a ball stopper. By the time we got to the end of part of the season, it seemed like he had really found his place with them, not forcing it. And certainly in the playoffs, like Julius Randle's been fantastic for them. And so, we already knew they had great wing defenders, McDaniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Anthony Edwards himself can be a great defender on the perimeter. Like they had all the requisite stuff. I think we just weren't sure what to make of them after swapping Towns for Randle and DiVincenzo. And because they had a rough start, they did beat a more than wounded Warriors team. Like, there a lot of teams would have beat the Warriors without Steph. The Rockets would have beaten the Warriors without Steph. So you don't place a ton on that, but Minnesota earned their way here, just as I was saying with Indiana. And again, Minnesota was in the conference finals a year ago, and that they're doing it now with a different core. Same basic group, but those were significant changes. Is a real testament to them and to their coach, Chris Finch, and whoever they get, Oklahoma or Denver, we'll find out after that Game 7. Minnesota's going to give them a tough time. Like like the conference finals in the West, I would be shocked if it were any fewer than 6 games, and it's not going to surprise me if it goes 7, no matter who they draw.
All right, finally, before I set you loose, my only reservation about just anointing OKC, because when they're playing peak, when they're hitting their ceiling, it looks different than I think maybe every team outside of a fully healthy Boston Celtic team. I mean, it was interesting all year long. It's like, are we overanalyzing this? Is it just going to be Thunder Celtics? Then, of course, you never know. Injuries happen. And I give Denver a lot of credit for showing some championship mettle. I thought Russell Westbrook was trying to point shave last night when he came in. I mean, Denver overcomes what appeared to be just a intentional sabotaging of that game, and we get a Game 7. It's in Oklahoma City. I will not write off a team with Nikola Jokic, but I wonder what you make of what we've seen so far and your thoughts on an exciting Game 7 come Sunday.
I mean, it's going to be just that game is going to be incredibly intense here. I mean, the Thunder, a 68-win team that have been the young up-and-comer for the last 2 years, and this is the first season that they've really made a run, and they're this close to the conference finals where they're supposed to be, and it's such a massive letdown if they don't get there. And the Nuggets have been written off, I don't know how many times in the last couple of years since they won the championship, and they've lost players, they fired their coach, they fired their GM, and yet here they are on the verge of the conference finals. And we've got the 2 MVP candidates going against each other, still waiting for that announcement from the NBA. It's going to be awesome. That game's going to be awesome. The Thunder need Jalen Williams the guard Jason Williams, or the guard forward Jason Williams, not the taller one. They need him to come through. He's obviously had a bit of a shaky series. On the Nuggets side of it, there's the roller coaster that is Russell Westbrook, because you just never know. He can shoot you in and shoot you out of a game. And their rotation's not particularly deep. Julian Strawther, great game last night, but can he repeat it? They may need it. And there's one thing to flag. There's one other thing to flag on the Nuggets side, which is that late in the game, there was a point where it looked like Aaron Gordon might have pulled his hamstring.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he was rubbing it, went out, went to the bench, came back in, finished the game. but I'm just putting a little flag there because I don't know what that might mean, right? We haven't heard anything. I'm not saying, he's not going to play Sunday or anything. I'm just that kind of thing is concerning this deep in a playoff series because if he's at all limited or for some reason if it's really a pull and he can't play, obviously like the Nuggets have no room for error. They have no depth, but Game 7 should be incredible.
All right, my friend. Well, I know you got to battle some Midtown traffic, so I'll set you loose. Enjoy that game, and I appreciate the time, man. Have a good weekend, okay?
You too, Spence. Thanks, man.
Howard Beck from The Ringer, formerly of the New York Times, fake news, LA Times, Sports Illustrated, one of my favorite NBA writers for like 30 years. Appreciate his time today on the program. And that is brought to you by friends at IFA Country Stores. When the seasons change, if you're like any good coach, you'll put together your game plan for a healthy green lawn, and you'll turn to the experts at IFA. Check out their 4+ lawn care program. Everything you need to make your yard a hit. It's the ultimate lawn owner power move at IFA and IFA.coop. All right, time now for a chance to win tickets to the Stirrin' Dirt May Mania Derby at Ogden Golden Spike Event Center. Let me say that again. It is the Stirrin' Dirt May Mania Derby at Ogden Golden Spike Event Center. Text DIRT right now. 877-353-0700. That's DIRT to 877-353-0700 to win tickets to the Stirrin' Dirt May Mania Derby at Ogden Golden Spike Event Center. Not really even sure what that sentence means, but if you want tickets, text in. All right, 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Friday afternoon, Craig Bolerjack is our guest. Coming up next, right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. NBA playoffs roll along tonight. Midtown Manhattan is the scene. It's going to be chaos, probably already is. It'll be 6 o'clock Mountain Time. The New York Knicks will try to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since the year 2000, when they played the Indiana Pacers, who, ironically enough, are awaiting the winner of Knicks Celtics. All right, big day for our next guest. I understand that Craig Bolerjack is turning 45 years old today. On this Friday afternoon. Bowler, happy birthday, sir. How we doing?
Thank you, buddy. Hey, that's a nice birthday present there, pal. I got allergies. It's spring, summertime, but other than that, I'm good. Yeah, 40. You're off a year. 44.
Oh, my bad. My bad.
Yeah.
Well, you don't look a day over 40, my friend. You've taken good care of yourself. So happy birthday, Craig, from all of us to you, okay?
Buddy. Appreciate that. Appreciate it.
We got any plans tonight? What do we got going on? What do we got cooking for the birthday?
I tell you, I'll be honest, man, kind of laying low. Families everywhere, this way and that. May do something Sunday, but I know I'm going to be watching some basketball. I'll tell you that. I've loved the playoffs. Incredible. I like the physicality. The comebacks leads me nothing. Free throws last night meant a lot for Denver. And tonight, you just said it. I don't know. What do you think? 25 years since the Pacers and the Knicks met in the conference final? Interesting, huh?
Yeah, very interesting. And as a unbiased basketball observer, I think the Knicks probably get it done. As a longtime Knicks fan, as this team has led me down year after year since I was 10 years old, I'm very nervous, Craig.
Yeah, you're not alone, I'm sure. It's crazy. And New York just had that something happen, and you know better than I do that no fan ever felt like it was in the bag. So many disappointments. They were involved in another interesting draft night, scenario that Patrick Ewing came to the Knicks on what was allegedly a frozen or a bit frozen draft card, if I'm not mistaken. It's been a wild run, man. A lot of basketball, a lot of players, a lot have come and gone. But tell you what, pretty good team. I think with Tatum out, this has got to go W, man, at the Garden, I would think. But we've been proven wrong before.
Yeah, I hope you're right. And since you brought up lottery and draft day malfeasance and things that are questioned by the general public, I just got to know, Craig, where were you and what was your reaction when you saw Mark Tatum pull out the envelope and the Jazz were set to draft at 5?
You know what? Honest story. I walked in my office and said, I'm just going to shut the door and watch this. So, if I want to say, yeah, I can, or if I want to go, damn, I can. I just sat there, put my hands and, underneath my chin. I said, all right, let's see what happens. And my gut was rolling, and I thought, I got a feeling after all the talk and all the numbers and, all the percentages that the 5 spot's going to be the Jazz. And it just rolled up, and there it was. And I just stared and thought, wow, how does that happen? And then I got up and told the wife and said, let's go have dinner, because I wasn't going to sit around here and just, hit my head against the wall. 17-win season, worst in Jazz franchise history. Dallas trades away Luka in the dark of night. Kyrie blows an ACL. Fans nearly riot in Dallas, Spence, as you know, and they end up getting number 1, and the Jazz drop down, to number 5. It just doesn't make sense, but in a way, nothing does. You take a chance when you alleged or you go the tank position, let's tank it. And what's interesting too, Spence, all 3 of the teams that had the top 3 worst records in the league all fell back in this draft selection, and I find that intriguing. If there is a lesson learned, you just go play. I'm like you. I'm old school, and I just think you go play and just do what you can with what's given. But you take a chance, you roll the dice, and you come up empty. Now you have to wait and see what the next step, the next direction is for the Jazz.
Yeah, and the good news is that in a way, not the way that we were all hoping it would work out, but in a way it did work out because as the worst team in the league, you are guaranteed a top 5 pick. So so the point of what they did this year certainly was probably twofold, and one was to have the best chance possible at getting number 1 overall, but the other point of it was to not fall past 5 because a top 5 pick, Craig, is very valuable in every single draft, and it's going to be valuable in this draft. So the bottom line is they're still going to get a really good player at 5 if they stay at 5. My question to you is, are you hearing anything about where their heads are at? Because we've heard a couple of reports over the past 24 hours that they're still going to be bold to try to do something to up the bottom line of this team. And to me, that indicates maybe staying at 5 is not on the table because San Antonio has to look at moving too. Now, the problem is there's a Giannis component out there. There's a Durant component out there. What does Boston's new ownership group do with a luxury tax bill of $500 million next year?
Amazing.
Is Jaylen Brown available? So if you're San Antonio, you probably have a lot of options. But any insider intel as to where the head of Danny Ainge is, the head of Justin Zanuck is, what you think the approach will be?
Spence, I wish I had an answer for you of yes, this is what direction they are, but no, quiet. From what I know, you can speculate, and there's options, and that's a good thing. Look, the Jazz collected draft picks for a reason, and that was to bargain. And right now, it's probably the most opportunistic time for them to have these picks in their pocket. And how do they use them? I mean, this is where Danny's expertise is going to have to come through on what he did in Boston in prior years. And, Jazz fans are going to have to sit back and go, that worked or it didn't. But you're right. The 5 spot still gives you a player that you can slide in, but I don't think that's where the Jazz were ever thinking personally. I mean, all indications were, it's Cooper. If Harper's there and by chance it goes 2, that's a possibility and we'll survive it. But I think this is an opportunity this summer where the Jazz can do a lot of things. They can move players. They can decide to stay young and rinse and repeat, which I think would be a bold decision, knowing that downtown is being re-energized with $1 billion and change. The 3-year project to give the Delta Center a facelift for hockey and the Jazz is right in front of us. They're underway now. And, the Olympics are around the corner, and you also have a new competitor in town. And Ryan Smith owns that team. It's what was the Utah Hockey Club, but the Utah Mammoth. And, I think that's the most intriguing thing for me, Spence. It's how do you handle, to have both teams financially fiscal and making money and getting return on the investment, but also is there enough advertising dollar to go around? Does someone peel off to join hockey that was a Jazz fan? That's interesting to me because this has never really happened ever in Utah, sports, is to have that type of competition, and they own the fourth pick. Lady Luck shined down on the Mammoth, unlike the Jazz. So I think that's some of the most intriguing conversation over the next month and a half on how this plays out. And, how aggressive Danny and Justin and Ryan truly are going to be. And you brought up some names that are going to move. Injuries are going to force it. In Boston, that's kind of a quiet, unknown, big story because new ownership. I've got a college buddy of mine who had some financial interest and investment in Boston. And, we've talked a little bit about, he's very quiet on the up and up, but yeah, but they're interested in Boston about what the changes will be. And now it's been accelerated with the Achilles tear to Jason Tatum, right? They may have to make a move quicker than they may have thought and maybe not play this again, won't play it forward. So, man, there's a lot of stuff going down. What do the Lakers do? What about LeBron? What about Phoenix? What about Steph? Golden State's era of greatness. Man, it's interesting. And Milwaukee, again, with Dame Lillard's Achilles, that puts him kind of in the driver's seat on what he wants to do and how this may play out for not only the Bucks, for multiple teams, though, around the league, East and West.
All right, Craig, are you ready for my trade idea?
Let's do it.
I'm going to throw this at you, and let's remind the listening audience that Craig Bolerjack is an employee of the Utah Jazz, so he needs to be careful about what he says, and we all understand that. Patrick Dumont, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, has said, we are keeping one and we are drafting Cooper Flagg. So no, Nico, you can't trade it. Get out of the room. That's what we're doing. So one is off the board, Craig. So let's move over to two, where the San Antonio Spurs find themselves in an interesting spot because they made the trade for De'Aaron Fox, and they have the reigning Rookie of the Year in Stephon Castle. So if the second best player in this draft is Dylan Harper, the reality is there's a lot of redundancy on San Antonio's roster. So what if you call San Antonio and you say, send us two? Okay, send us two, and then send us 14. They've got 2 lottery picks. Send us 2 and 14. Send us Keldon Johnson and Harrison Barnes. We're going to send you 5, and we're going to send you Markkanen. Lauri Markkanen, the number 5 pick, for the number 2 pick, the number 14 pick, in exchange for Harrison Barnes and Keldon Johnson, who's only 25 and a really good player. What do you think?
You know, that's intriguing. And I think it depends, too, on where Lowry's head is in this, because it's been well documented that he wanted to stay in Utah. He did stay in Utah, and he still wants to be in Utah. Now, that was before. I haven't heard anything out of Lowry since draft night. But, you know, I think the other part of the equation, Spence, is that the timetable for Lowry and the sense of how many years in the league, his age, and how do the Jazz look at him in the future, and is he now going to be past his prime when this all comes to, you know, fruition of being a major player in the Western Conference? I think, you know, it's an intriguing idea. I really do. I think there's a lot of them out there. And, you know, you still have a John Collins, I believe, who has a player option. You know, JC. There's a lot of players the Jazz have. There's some talent, even, you know, the talent of the last 2 draft class could be moved if necessary. Some of them. So I think Will Hardy said it best in his presser last summer was, you know, this is not an easy league. It's not easy to make a roster. It's not easy to stay on a roster. And this past year, I think they got a really good insight of who can actually, I think, play under pressure, deliver under pressure, and who wants to be a part of this build. Obviously, there's a few that probably may want to go someplace else. They may not have a choice, but that's just the way the life is in the NBA. I think there's going to be a lot of names out there, Spence. I really do. And I think it goes beyond Giannis. You know, what does Golden State want to put on the table? Are they players? What is Phoenix going to do? They're going to be players. And now Dallas, out of nowhere, is obviously sitting in the driver's seat, trying to revitalize a franchise who most of us thought a week ago, 5 days ago, was basically dead on the vine, right? And they're going to have to take a step back and really rethink this thing. But Lady Luck shone down on them, man. I tell you, it's amazing to see how this thing worked out. It really is. This will go down again in Jazz lore as another year where you wanted to develop, and you did. You had the worst record in basketball, the worst in franchise history, but it didn't work out, and you have to move on and find a way. One thing, Spence, you cannot take this, you cannot allow this, and through your idea of a trade, that idea is moving forward. The one thing you don't want to do under this circumstance is to make you move backwards in this situation. So anything Justin and Danny probably do, they've got to be forward thinkers on what will get them past this disappointment, this bump that didn't occur for Cooper Flagg, and can you survive it and move on without missing a beat in the rebuild? I think that's the biggest challenge of all.
Lowry is turning 28 in 6 days, so he will be 28 this year. And, you know, Craig, even if the Jazz grabbed number 1 and drafted Cooper Flagg, the reality is that would not have put them in a place to really challenge for anything all that special this year. As it is, they didn't grab number 1, and they're left at 5, where they're going to get a good young piece. And look, man, I don't know Ryan Smith all that well personally. All my interactions with him have been very pleasant. One thing we can all agree upon is the dude is bold. I mean, he's a bold guy. Yeah. And, I would imagine that an owner like Ryan, who at least front-facing says he wants to win and wants to win soon, I think you put everything on the table at this point because – sure, Lowry wants to be here, but Lowry Markkanen is making max money for the next 4 years. He's fine no matter where he's at. And yes, when players want to be here, it's important. But if he doesn't fit the timeline, I actually think they might put him on the table to move up or grab a couple of young pieces that are a little bit more exciting because they have to have done their calculation by now to understand that there really is not many avenues to improve the team to make next year look different than this year unless they're going to be bold, and Ryan's a bold guy. So I wonder if we're going to see finally some bold movement from this ownership group and from this front office. What do you think?
Yeah, great points. And you remember the comment about going big game hunting. That didn't happen. And maybe this summer that statement by Danny comes to fruition. And however they end up doing it, Spence, there's multiple ways, as you know, draft, free agency, using trades and moving players in and out. I think you're going to see a lot of movement because of age and injury. A lot of teams have to re-energize and rev their roster back up. But there's a lot of great players are on the cusp of the end. And that's what the Jazz, I think, probably in the back of their planning, in their mind of planning all this, is that they'd be setting in a position where in the West especially, it was aging rapidly with, Hall of Famers, first ballot Hall of Famers. And now injuries hit the East, and you wonder, who's going to accelerate the process even more. That to me is so intriguing. But also, it's of the future of downtown. It's a competition with the Mammoth and the Jazz. The Jazz have always been, top dog. And it's interesting to see, to me, what Ryan wants to do on how competitive they can be against each other, but yet still profit. And that, to me, intrigues me a ton because, again, Salt Lake's growing, but when it comes to multi-million-dollar deals, in advertising packages, yeah, they're out there, but just how many? And is there enough to sustain and profit off of two young franchises that are looking to make their way through the NBA and the NHL? Spence, I tell you, I mean, this is where you earn your money. Danny's experience has got to shine through. Justin's been an agent. He knows players and tendencies. And all has to come together to get the right decision on the table and to pull the string on it and make sure that it's long term. Going back to Lowry, he's intriguing, but not so if he doesn't have the right players around him. I think we saw that this year. Is he the second or third best on a great team? Most likely. Does he want to play? I know he wants to play, but he also understood what the situation was. And as each day and each game went by, tick-tock, tick-tock. I mean, time goes on, and you lose a season, and all of a sudden you jump in and you're 10 years in. So you make a great point. There's young players, and they're younger every year. Cooper's not even 18 yet. I mean, I find that fascinating. And so that comes into the equation, I think, too, Spence, is – how long do you hold a player? How long do you want to give give him time to develop? Because, look, back in the day of Sloan, and look, that's going back, I know it, but guys were 3 and 4 years. They were 23, some 24. Big T was a senior, won the national title, 7th player taken. Was he NBA ready? He says he was. And I think, he proved that he was. And now you're waiting to see if the pick was right. And that makes this whole situation, I think, even more intriguing and more difficult. You're rolling the dice on young talent because you're not sure how they're going to mature and what kind of work ethic truly do they have if they're going to be a pro and make the type of money that's in the league right now.
All right, Buller, last thing and I'll set you loose. We had your guy Alema in studio yesterday for an hour, and it was fun, man, telling some story time, and we both decided that we've all just kind of followed you to, find our way in this business as, Alema kind of followed in your footsteps over at KSL. Of course, you had the original Big Show. I had the second iteration of that. Unfortunately, we had to drag the same partner around for years. But he said something that kind of, shout out Gordon, we love you. He said something that kind of, I don't know, made me smile because Alema's such a sweet guy. He just said, look, we all as a collective Jazz community and whatever part of the ecosystem you're part of the Jazz community, whether it's fans, media, we all want to see the Jazz win and do well. We all just have to find our own way to enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
How do you do that when the team is not close to what we're accustomed to? How do you enjoy the ride as a media member, as a fan, as somebody who cares about the Jazz? How do you do that?
Well, you know what? You're catching me on a quick answer, but what first came to mind was people. Working with Alema, I've known him for years and years and years. We've been through it at KSL and beyond. I've known you, known Monson, David James, Scotty Gerard. All the names that we hear around town are people we all know and interact with. And it makes that, Wes Ruff over at Channel 4 forever. But I think it's the people that I see on a nightly basis, but the fans who are wide-eyed and also the newer fans that come into that building and just embrace a franchise now 51 years old, and you go, wow, look at the longevity of the franchise, but also look at the generations of fans that have come through the house that Larry built. And before it at the Salt Palace. And, for me this year was challenging. Thurl and I had multiple talks, and Lauren, her first year was, first we're in the NBA. We're lucky. We love it, and I love being around the game and the people. But it's a privilege to sit there and call the Utah Jazz. It's called, it's the NBA. And I see great players every night. You're disappointed? Absolutely. Do I want to win? Absolutely. And it's hard to win 17 and still try to keep your focus, but that's my job. And we try to prepare the best we could this year to find a positive. An Isaiah Collier, Kyle Filipowski, even Will Hardy's growth as a coach, Spence, as you and I talked with, during the year. And Walker Kessler, man, he could have totally tanked after a sophomore slump, and the guy busted through in the minutes given, and he matured and became a legitimate big, in my opinion. He's got a long ways to go, but I think the Jazz see that there is definitely hope and growth with Walk and others. So that's what I try to hang on to, man. But when you go to the arena, the energy in that building it just takes you. It just takes you. And that's what I enjoy every time I walk in the building and prepare for a game, is because win or lose, you're still out there trying to give your best to a group of people who most of them have a connection with the past, and they're trying to build one with the future. Do they get frustrated? Oh, yeah, I hear it all the time. Go on the road. I do, talk shows on the road, and fans ask, or hosts ask the same thing about, what about the Jazz? They're going to become Stockton Malone. Well, look, those days are over, and that's hard to accept. But at the same time, you have to also say thank you for those days with Jerry and Hotz and John and Carl and Hornacek, because it built the foundation of where we are today. I know this sounds probably like, it's over the top, but you ask the question, and honestly, this is what pours out of me, is that the past does help explain or at least guide the future. And there's nothing more than what Jazz fans want to taste, and Ryan and Ashley want to taste, is another opportunity to go back and win a championship, or have the opportunity to win a championship for Salt Lake, state of Utah. In fact, now it's more regional than ever. So, the people that are involved, man, I tell you, I love walking through the hallways, and the fans are there, and they are ready to roll. They love the NBA, they love the Jazz, but they also are intrigued with the rest of the league as well. They're there to see superstars. They're there to see LeBron. They're there to see, Steph Curry. And so it's kind of a combination of everything. But man, it's hard not to love it. Even though you're losing, you're trying to find some positives, Spence, along the way. I'm hoping some positives hit because Jazz fans deserve it. They've been, I'd say, strong, durable for a long time. And it'd be great to have an opportunity to see them enjoy postseason play at a high level again.
All right, Bowler. Well, behave yourself tonight. I don't want to see you end the night with a lampshade on your head after getting a little loose, but go have a good time, man. Celebrate that birthday, and I appreciate your time, okay?
All right, pal. Have a great weekend. We'll talk soon.
The birthday boy, Craig Bowlerjack, on the program on a Friday afternoon, brought to you by friends at Outlaw Distilling, a new partner here on the ESPN Sports Network. Outlaw Distillery, a homegrown grain-to-glass, nitty-gritty whiskey, vodka, rum, and moonshine distillery right here in Salt Lake County. Outlaw Distillery, Utah grown with so much history here of cowboys, outlaws, mining, and more. Outlaw has everything on the spirit spectrum, from their spiced rum, vanilla bean rum, Outlaw coffee rum, honey bourbon, barrel-proof whiskey, vodka, and moonshine. They have it all, and they're embracing the Outlaw name by being rebellious and making some very unique spirits that aren't being seen or created by any other distilleries in Utah. Passionate group, we're happy to have them on board. If you want to take a sip of their spirits, you can either find their bottles in local liquor stores or book a tasting. Tell them I sent you. It's an hour and a half, and you get to keep your shot glass as a souvenir after trying all their spirits. Get your tour and tasting booked at outlawdistillery.com today. The doors opened in 2015 as only the fourth distillery in the great state of Utah. Deeply rooted in Utah history and tradition, even the name Outlaw is inspired by the legendary character Butch Cassidy and the Utah Outlaw Trail, which served as primary transportation for many of the notorious Wild West outlaws. The vision for Outlaw Distillery is clear: to help show the world that some of the best spirits can come from one of the least expected places, i.e. here in the state of Utah. All right, we'll get back to hoops a little bit later on. We have Dave McMenamin. Dunny's going to roll by today. We'll preview tomorrow's RSL match. But coming up next, we'll do a little golf. The PGA Championship, Quail Hollow, has caused a lot of problems for some of the better golfers in the world, but some of the lesser-known guys are playing really well. Tony Finau is hanging in there, trying to make the cut. He's one under par. He's about to have a very lengthy par putt. So Paul Pugmire will stop by for a little golf coming up on the other side on a Friday drive right here on ESPN 700. All right, we got Dunny on the program today. Brian Dunseth will stop by to preview tomorrow's RSL match and answer the question, how does a soccer team learn to score goals? A goal would be nice. Dave McMiniman stops by later on. But time now for a little golf on a Friday afternoon with our guy Paul Pugmire. Paul, happy Friday, sir. Apparently golf is hard.
It is at Quail Hollow, that's for sure.
All right, tell me about this course, then let's get into the specifics because it's interesting. It is causing so many problems for so many of the best golfers in the world, and some of the lesser-known players are actually playing okay. But tell me about this track, Paul.
Quail Hollow in Charlotte is a big golf course. Everything about it is big. It's really long. It clicks in at 7,800 yards, depending on how exactly they set it that day. It requires that you play your tee ball in the fairway for both rough, which traditionally is long, and it's longer than normal this week, plus trees. There are trees in the flight paths, a lot of dog legs on this course. And then they got a lot of water, a lot of rain in the days running up to this tournament. And this rough that they have long anyway is so thick and so heavy, you miss the fairway, and it's an endurance test to maneuver the ball out of that thick, heavy, wet grass. It is just a big, hard test. Most people will know about the final 3 holes. It's called the Green Mile. They are brutal, really tough holes. Number 18 has a creek running on the left-ish side. There's fairway on the other side of the creek, so it's kind of in the middle of the fairway, the whole length of the hole. And the driving area is narrow. You end up going uphill to the hole. There's a false front on the green. It's like 470 yards as a par 4. Finishing out a win on this course is really, really hard. It's just a big course.
All right. Are you ready for my Friday dumb guy golf question?
It won't be, but let's have it.
How do they determine the cut? Because it just moved. So about 15 minutes ago, I was ready to say that Jordan Spieth was probably not going to play over the weekend. Of course, Jordan is the big story because he has a chance. I think it's his 10th chance to complete the career Grand Slam after his wonderkin's rise as a young golfer. He just, for whatever reason, besides golf is hard, okay, he just was not able to continue the way he started, which was going to be tough to follow up anyway. But the cut line just moved from 1 over to 2 over. How is that determined?
Round numbers, you start with a field of 154 and you cut it to, most of the time it's low 65 and ties. And it is the and ties where things get squishy. And so as players are making pars, making bogeys, throwing a birdie here and there, that number of 65 and ties is moving around. And so it will stay volatile. It will move until the last player that's within a shot or two above or below the cut line, the projected cut line, until they're done. It's pretty common for the cut line to move at this point on a Friday afternoon. And we've seen them bounce all over the place. This one's been pretty stable at +1 all day, but yeah, it just moved, which means that the afternoon wave is slipping a little.
It's pretty wild to consider Jordan Spieth's career arc, where he won the Masters in 2015 and tied the 72-hole record set by Tiger in '97. And then followed up by winning the U.S. Open in the same year, 5 under, youngest U.S. Open champ since Bobby Jones in 23, and then won the Tour Championship in 15, clinched the FedEx Cup, and then won his 3rd major Open Championship in 2017. But he has not been the same. How much of it is his health? How much of it is golf is hard? How much of it is just whatever you would attribute it to?
It's a little bit of all of the above. He has had some health issues, culminating with wrist surgery here about a year ago. And boy howdy, that is hard to come back from. But there always has been a combination of a flaw and magic in his game. And the flaw has been that he doesn't consistently keep his driver in play in the way that the great champions who sustain excellence always do. The magic was his wedge game, both in terms of imagination and execution. And the thing about it is, it's not sustainable. You just you just can't live like that all the time, and that has caught up with him as well.
All right, let's talk about Tony. I just watched him play the most ridiculous. He was like chipping from the green to allow the ball to leak down close. He is even par, 1 over for the day, which is tied for 48, so he's in the top 50. It looks like he will play over the weekend, barring a collapse down the stretch. The way you described the course, Paul, kind of caught my attention in a way that maybe this should match Tony's game. Is that fair to say? And what do you make of the way he's played so far?
It's totally fair to say. There's no question that big hitters have an advantage at Quail. And you look at people who have won there, and we have a lot of data on Quail Hollow because it's been a tour stop for a number of years. The Wells Fargo's played there. Plus, the PGA Championship was played there in 17, was it, when Justin Thomas won, another big hitter. Rory McIlroy has an amazing record there between wins at the Wells Fargo and just playing well in the PGA when it was there. Another big hitter, and Tony Finau is one of those. I would have been unsurprised to see him more firmly in the mix, higher up the leaderboard. Still has a chance to make a climb, but he's spending holes right now just making pars.
Rory, as you mentioned, has had a lot of success on this course. He's had a lot of success, of course, this year. Better day today, 3 under through 14, even par. So he'll play through the weekend, and we'll get to, because the low number is 8 under right now, and we'll get to the guys that are actually at the top of the leaderboard in a moment, but we'll focus on the big names for now. So, look, I guess if there's a guy that could put together 2 very low rounds on Saturday and Sunday, it might be Rory. But are you surprised to see his relative struggles through the first round and a half so far?
Yeah, I was. His 74 yesterday, it did surprise me. This course sets up so well for him, and he has been dominant statistically on it. I was quite surprised to see him struggle yesterday, but maybe that's just one of those things where he's coming down off of such a high with his Masters and career Grand Slam win. But I thought he would have been doing better. I'm less surprised to see him playing well today.
Cam Smith. Let's see. Phil Mickelson, Brooks Koepka. What the hell happened to Dustin Johnson? I mean, I don't mean to set up a question so you can just crack on Liv, but these Liv guys outside of DeChambeau aren't competing at the highest of levels in these championships more often than not. There are certainly exceptions, but this is not a great major championship for most of the Liv guys. What does that say to you?
Liv is set up in such a way that it is closer to an exhibition than a test, and it's 54 holes, not 72. It doesn't have a cut. The tournaments are not played on as good, as demanding a golf courses as the PGA Tour plays on, and the shotgun start, I think, really hampers championship play because a championship finishes with people having the same holes in the same order with the same finish, and you don't have that on a shotgun start. You add it all up, and I don't think Liv prepares people to play at the highest level. Now, there's going to be one-offs here and there, of course. Brooks Koepka has won a major championship since Liv started. Of course, Bryson DeChambeau has done the same. We're talking about 2 of the great players of their generation who are athletic freaks. And we're also talking about it's not as sustained as it is with other players. You mentioned DJ. He has largely disappeared. The one who has done the same that is really just sad to me is John Rahm. Rahm has become invisible almost, and it's for those reasons I just rehearsed. LIV doesn't create championship play, and so I think these players lose their edge.
One of the more interesting things, and I've shared this with you, that I've learned about golf since I really have become fascinated with it, trying to play and get better over the past 4 or 5 years and watch it a lot more than I used to and follow it. And I've told you I love those golf documentaries because it teaches me about the history of the game that I didn't necessarily know. Is like, it's pretty rare. Like, I could never imagine Ray Allen changing his jump shot. Like, I could never imagine Reggie Miller being like, I got to go back to the drawing board. But Tiger Woods, even after his dominant performance back in the 2008 to 2015 or whatever, was constantly tinkering. And so Max Homa has a new caddy. Joe Griner, I guess, is a good buddy of his, is no longer on his bag. He changed sponsors. He has a brand new set of golf clubs. He changed coaches, going from Mark Blackburn to John Scott. I believe this is what I'm reading. And Max is a guy that's won on tour. Max is a guy that's played in Ryder Cups, but Max is also a guy that for the past year or so has not looked like Max Homa. How much do you attribute his willingness to look at what is going on and make all these changes to what we've seen so far? He carded a 7 under 64, which is the low round of the day today, and he puts him right in the mix at 5 under par. What do you make of what we've seen from Max so far?
Well, first of all, Max is eminently likable. He's a bright light in the game and a deep talent. I always expected Max to come back from this because talent always rises. But and for me so far, the highlight of this tournament has been Max's 64 today. Love seeing him play well. I thought he took on too many changes at once. He certainly doesn't consult with me, but that's what it looks like from the outside. Just too many changes, too much going on at one time to manage it with the absolute razor-thin margins that exist between PGA Tour level golf, championship level golf, and not championship level golf. And so seeing all these things add up, swing changes, swing refinements, they are a part of the game. What happens is your body changes as you grow older. It changes day to day. You've got to be able to be making adjustments. Some players have chosen to or had to make bigger adjustments than others. Tiger is a great story in that regard. But for Max, I think it's that he had too much changes going on this year, and it just was too much to manage. Maybe he's kind of getting it all together now.
All right, as I referenced to start the interview, watching this tournament has been interesting to see a lot of the better golfers in the world struggle, and some of the lesser-known guys actually play well. So ahead of Max is Matt Fitzpatrick, who we all know, and I've heard of Matthew Pavone. I don't know much about him. Jonathan, I believe it's Vejas, is 8 under, and he's your leader in the clubhouse. So the 3 golfers ahead of Max, the leader, Vejas, and then Pavone, Fitzpatrick. What do you make of those 3, the way they played so far, and tell us a little bit about them?
Yeah, so Johnny, I thought it was Vegas. He is an interesting player. He is the only player from Venezuela ever to make the PGA Tour. He's 40 years old. He's been out there a while. He's been in the States a long time. He played at the University of Texas. Long time ago, when he was in town with what was then the Web.com tour, he participated in a junior clinic that I was a part of, and he was down on his knees in the grass with the kids, and they loved him, and he gave his time. I was so impressed with him. He's won 4 times on the tour. He's won the Canadian Open twice, and they always play the Canadian Open on great courses. It's a hard tournament to win. So he's got game, but He never has done anything in a major. He's never led a major. He's never had back-to-back under par rounds in a major. It'll be interesting to see at this point in his career how Johnny can hold it together going into the weekend. This is unplowed ground for him. I don't know. We'll see. Fitzpatrick, we know he can win a major. He won the U.S. Open at Brookline. Pavone has won on Torrey Pines. He won the Farmers a couple of years ago. So he has shown that he can win on a big, hard golf course. This is going to be an interesting weekend.
It is. And before I set you loose and find out what's on the show tomorrow, I always like to ask you, the low score is 8 under. And if you say it's Vegas, it's Vegas. I literally have never heard of the guy. Okay, so he's from Venezuela. I figured the G might be silent, whatever. But anyway, so the low number is 8. And when you look at some of the players in the mix, namely Scotty, he's at 4 under, but that is 4 back. So if the low number is 8, based off of what you know of Vegas and based off of what you know of the field, how far behind 8 are you willing to go to indicate who we can still look at as players that could actually win the thing?
Great question. Let's go down to -3. I think people within 5 shots are going to have a chance. 2 reasons. It's not bunched up. You don't have 20 players within 5 shots, and that happens with some frequency. And so there's not too many players you have to overcome. Plus, this is Quail Hollow, and it's a major. People are going to be coming backward. I don't see a lot of charges going on. I think if you offered somebody -12 right now, they'd take it.
All right, Paul, what's coming up on the show tomorrow?
Well, we're in college championship season. We're going to be talking with Coach Bruce Brockbank from Brigham Young University. The Cougars won their regional, and they're going to nationals. The Utes came up 1 shot short as a team. It's heartbreaking. But Braxton Watts from the Utes won the individual side of the regional they were playing in. And so Braxton Watts is going to the nationals as an individual. We will be talking with Braxton and with Coach Brockbank tomorrow.
All right, Paul, thank you for the time. Have a great show and enjoy the weekend. We'll chat soon.
Thank you.
Paul Pugmire, Utah Golf Radio, every Saturday morning on the station. Time now for the Festival of Tees. It's the ESPN Festival of Tees, powered by the Utah Golf Association. Each day of spring, ESPN 700 is giving away rounds of golf to the best courses in the state. Listen to the Down and Dirty with Scott Mitchell, the Sean O'Connell Show, and the Drive with Spence Checketts for your chance to win each day from ESPN 700 and the Utah Golf Association. Details can be found at ESPN700sports.com. So the leaderboard, PGA Championship, Quail Hollow Golf Club, Charlotte, North Carolina. Jonathan Vegas is your leader at 8 under par. Matthew Pavone, Matt Fitzpatrick at 6 under. Fitzpatrick still on the course. Max Homa carded a 64 to find himself at 5 under, along with Alex Smalley. Some names of note: JT Poston and Scotty Scheffler are 4 under par. Bryson DeChambeau is 3 under par. Sam Stevens, my guy, 3 under par, as is Akshay Bhatia. Let's find you Tony. Victor Hovland, 2 under par. So is Tommy Fleetwood and John Rahm. Keegan Bradley just birdied to go to 2 under par. And Wyndham Clark is at 1 under. Some notables here. Tony must have just made a bogey. He did. Tony is now even, tied for 49th. And he's 1 over on the day, but he's on 13. So hopefully he can hang on and play through the weekend. The cut line right now is at 2 over par, which should allow Jordan Spieth to play the weekend, but it does not look like Jordan will be capturing the Grand Slam anytime soon. All right, text line is 877-353-0700. Here's the deal. We're going to pick 2 winners. One winner is going to play 18 holes for free at Mountaindale. Oh, man. Congratulations to you. A secondary winner is going to go see a stand-up comic who's not very funny. His name is Matt Rife. But here's what we're going to do. Porter, I have in my possession your weekly bonus. Now, we're operating off a budget, so I have in my possession your weekly bonus. It's sitting right here.
Which is very much appreciated.
It is very much appreciated. So I want the texters to text in, does Porter deserve his weekly bonus this week? Has he done a good enough job? If you listen to the show consistently, you know Porter's contributions. Does Porter deserve his weekly bonus? 877-353-0700. Text in yes or no and why. And it's a very valuable weekly bonus. Should we tell the listeners what the bonus is, or should we lead them to believe you're actually getting paid some money?
I don't know if they can handle it. They'll be jealous.
Does Porter deserve his weekly bonus, which is an Uncrustable sandwich? That's called working here at Broadway. 877-353-0700. Should I award Porter for his hard work with a nice peanut butter and grape jelly sandwich, which was in the freezer overnight, so it's nice and thawed.
There we go.
It's ready to go. 877-353-0700. One winner to play Mountain Dell and one winner to go see Matt Rife. I'd rather play golf. All right, we got 2 hours in the books. We got 2 hours to go. We're going to switch gears a little bit. RSL, Rocky Mountain Cup, Crapids. Don't call them the Rapids. Crapids. Will RSL score a goal? Brian Dunseth will enlighten us and inform us. This is a team that right now it might be the worst offensive soccer team we've ever had here besides 2005 when, like, Dipsy Selawani was the leading scorer with, like, 3 goals. It's a rough scene. We'll see if Dunny has any confidence that RSL can put it together. By the way, some breaking news. The 49ers have finally signed Brock Purdy. 5 years, $265 million for Brock Purdy. Man, the business of the NFL when you got to pay your quarterback. So we'll bring in Brian Dunseth, and then Dave McMiniman stops by. We're back to some NBA hoops. The New York Knicks and the Boston Celtics are 2 hours away from tip at Madison Square Garden, so we got a lot to do the rest of the way on a Friday edition of The Drive. It's great to have you with us. Keep it right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, and we are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Got NHL playoffs tonight here on ESPN 700. The chase for Lord Stanley's Cup continues. Such a great tournament. I think the Utah Mammoth did not say Utah Hockey Club. Proud of myself. I think we'll find them there next year. I do think it's a playoff team next year. And I think it's interesting to consider the juxtaposition of the hockey club, Mammoth, whatever, and the Utah Jazz and the way that the two front offices have gone about their business of a rebuild. Now, in fairness, this year was about year 5 of Bill Armstrong's rebuild and year 3, I guess, for the rebuild of the Utah Jazz. So we'll see if they can actually kind of get their stuff together. But NHL playoffs on our radio station tonight, and then we have Knicks Celtics on the Fan. Knicks Celtics less than 2 hours away from tip at the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden. Dave McMiniman's going to roll by later on. But time now to talk a little soccer. Club legend, friend of the program, Brian Dunseth. Happy Friday, Dunny. How we doing?
No, I appreciate it, man. Sorry to keep you waiting. By the way, did I hear you say another rebuild for the Utah Jazz? I feel like I've heard that since 2005.
Oh, the Clipper fan comes out, and Dunny, look at that, taking shots at the Utah Jazz. Hey, look, man, it's tough. It's tough sledding, dude. I miss spring basketball, man. I love the playoffs, is all.
Nah, I'm just teasing, man. I'm having a hard enough time watching the Clippers now that they've got James Harden in the starting 5. So trust me, I feel the pain.
Dunny, how do we score goals? How does this outside of as Kamrani likes to say, this year RSL Diego Luna's well, and they don't do much else well in the attacking third. What's going on in the attack, dude? Help me understand this.
It was the loss of Andres Gomez and Chicho Arango. That doesn't help. Anderson Julio being sent down to Dallas with Junca coming up. The lack of investment in the international window in the midst of a transition in ownership once again. And we're rinsing and repeating the same conversation you and I had back in February when we were heading into the season. So not much has changed outside of Gozo is the 2025 version of what the 2023 version of Diego Luna was, which is a young kid that utilized the U.S. Under-17 experience, the U.S. Under-20 experience, going to be a part of the Olympic team experience, and turn that into opportunity when other guys weren't performing. Because at the end of the day, no matter the apparent or the equivalent value of players coming in, if statistically you're not affecting the game in a consistent level, it's going to open up the door. And that's why Diego Luna is going to be a full U.S. men's national team player under Mauricio Pochettino, and Gozo is going to be a week-in, week-out starter in Major League Soccer.
Okay, what is fair to say, both critically and then maybe given space for some things that happened that nobody saw coming about the additions or / lack thereof additions now that the primary window is come and gone? We have not spoken since that window came and gone. It's Willie Agata, and then it's Johnny Russell, who you probably played against, due respect. But
he's not that old.
I think he's like 38, dude. I mean, look, ultimately,
I was long gone by that point.
Okay, fair enough. But you get the gist. So tell me what's fair to say on both sides of the coin about the primary transfer window and what RSL did and did not do.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think Jago and Piol were not in terms of physical build similar, but technically and tactically played the game differently, but they were projects. Elias Manuel, you dodged a bullet with that guy. Said he wanted to come, then he said he didn't want to come and wanted a new contract. C'est la vie. And then ultimately coming up short on God, I can't remember. I can't remember how to pronounce his name exactly, but Bosniak, the kid that was playing, the Slovakian international, the kid was playing in Portugal, and that fell apart at the last minute, where I commend Kurt Arnolfo and Real Salt Lake for holding their ground and not allowing people to change the agreement on the deal in the dying moments. And Boy Vista is long recognized for some really unsavory things. I believe whether it's Reggie Cannon in Dallas or Alvarez Ellis in Houston, they still owe those two teams significant sums of money, having not paid on previous transfers in Major League Soccer. So there was already a kind of a general awareness. But the reality is the risk versus reward, right? The risk is, as you continue to negotiate to get a fair price that you think is doable for your club, the reward is if you get it over the line. The risk is if you've pushed it to the final moments of a window and that Herbie Hancock still isn't on the piece of paper, well, then you've royally pushed a moment in which you now are punished because that window is closed. I think Willie Agata coming over is at 25, 26 years of age, a guy that can score 10-plus goals in a season is a smart and savvy move because everything had gone sideways in Kansas City, both off and off the field, that had led to the departure and firing of the most tenured manager in Major League Soccer at the time, Peter Vermes. Johnny Russell is at the end of his career, but I think a great addition in terms of the locker room. He's got a ton of presence, a ton of leadership, still got a great left foot, and we're just waiting for him to be fully fit enough after, being out of contract for a little bit to step on the field. But, the reality is, again, when you lose and you make the decision to cash in on Andres Gomez, which was really, for me, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I think the right decision. And then the surprises of Chicho Arango effectively wanting to leave, and he's flying right now, but he becomes a distressed asset. Now you're looking at a situation where you're relying on guys to score goals that are either unproven or unreliable.
So if we're going to focus on one positive, it certainly is this young man, Diego Luna, who has continued to show that he is a star on the rise with 7 goals on the season. And, Dunny, it's not just that he's scoring goals. Like, the way he's doing it, a lot of them are just like wonder strikes where you go, holy smokes. And I just wonder if he's already better than you thought he could ever be.
That's a great question. No one's ever asked me that. I'm still to this point not sure what his ceiling is. And I mean that with the utmost respect, because I could easily see clubs from La Liga. I could see clubs in Holland, so Spain, Holland, Germany. I could see teams in Mexico. I could see, because of his build similar to, Jefferson Savarino, I could see him down in Brazil. Because he's kind of built like Clint Mathis was built. He's got that feel. He's also kind of built like Cuauhtemoc Blanco, for those that remember back in the day, the Mexican international, and spent some time in Chicago. The thing about Diego is his center balance, technique, monster mentality, all of those things. But most important for me is that he's a kid that bet on himself. And I don't know how you could ever bet against a kid who's willing to bet on himself. And to walk away from the San Jose Earthquakes and go to El Paso as a teenager, to work himself into a moment where he's got the opportunity to come to Real Salt Lake, to get punched in the teeth on a few occasions of understanding what that next step looked like. Whether you talk about dietary, whether you talk about physical, whether you talk about the work off the ball on the defensive side, he has done everything that has been asked of him. I covered the U.S. men's national team in January down in Orlando when he got his nose broken. And Mauricio Pochettino said what he loves best about him. He said, quote, big balls in the postgame on TNT in our coverage. And I don't think there's a better description of what he's got. There's from a competitive standpoint, a killer mentality. I still can't understand or wrap my head around why he was left off the Olympic team in the summer. He was justly rewarded with an all-star spot as well as the MLS Young Player of the Year. He was the best performer down at the Nations League when had the opportunity against Canada to step on the field for Mauricio Pochettino in that 3rd and 4th place game. And Spence, I fully expect him to be gone for a good chunk of the summer from Real Salt Lake, because I think this kid is going to be one of the main featuring playmakers for the game against Turkey, the game against Nashville, and then heading into the Gold Cup this summer. He's been fantastic. And I know in a position where there's a lot of great number 10s in Major League Soccer, I would never want to see him overshadowed by the bigger names, because I think the amount of respect that he's earned from the players around this league speaks volumes for what he's done in his short career so far.
The politics surrounding the U.S. men's national team program probably aren't things that I fully understand. but I know that you do. Is it too late to expect Diego to be a key part of the U.S. men's national team come World Cup 26?
I think it's the immediacy and the future. I'm not joking, Spence. Mauricio Pochettino adores Diego Luna. I'm trying not to give too much that was behind the scenes. But Diego, we kind of use this saying in soccer, and I know Pablo's probably used it with you on multiple occasions. He's got that dog in him. Like he is a monster mentality player. And the only thing that's going to slow him down is, God forbid, any type of injuries. He is, as long as Mauricio Pochettino, as of right now, Mauricio Pochettino, he's going to be involved. I have no doubt. And when the roster comes out for those two friendlies, which I'm fortunate enough to be a part of against Turkey and in East Hartford, Connecticut, and then against Switzerland and Nashville, it's reverse fixtures. Mexico will be up here playing Switzerland at the U, and then they'll flip-flop the teams on the return a few days later. I think Pochettino and his staff love everything that they're seeing, because there's no, how do I say this correctly? With all due respect to the guys that are cutting their teeth overseas and continuing to push the envelope for some of the biggest clubs in Champions League competition, Diego, there's not an ounce of entitlement that comes along with Diego Luna. He recognizes every moment that he has to work and earn every chance that he gets. And there's something to be said about, to your point, we're about to turn into that final 12 months before the World Cup comes to the United States. And God forbid we have any similar type of performance that we saw at the Nations League or Copa Libertadores last summer. So I think Diego is fully cognizant of what these chances mean. And I would never, ever bet against Diego Luna.
Is RSL wasting this young man's ability? Because it just feels like there are way too many games where if Diego doesn't create something, there's nothing created. Does he have enough help in the attack?
No, not right now. And with respect to Diego, I think Diogo Gonçalves hasn't come anywhere close to being the player that we thought the previous two players coming from Denmark could be. When talking about Evander, who was in Portland and has moved to FC Cincinnati, and Hani Mukhtar, who's been a multiple MLS All-Star as well as Best 11 performer down in Nashville. So been really disappointed with the lack of consistent performances and influence that Diogo has. He's looked more like a complementary piece as opposed to a pure designated player. And statistically, Dominic Marchuk hasn't shown me anything anywhere near enough. And I can't be the only one if Pablo Mastroianni continues to give Gozo the run out. Because on both sides of the ball, Gozo has looked a much more dangerous player that's willing to leave it all on the field, as opposed to Marchuk, that in moments has looked dangerous, but far from the consistent product that we expected after betting down for the better part of the last 12 months.
So, Dunny, before I set you loose, I've had a few guests who cover RSL who feel like as a result of the lack of additions made, and yes, there's a summer transfer window, but after that closes, I think you have 8 or 9 matches left. Do you feel like this is a lost season? Do you? I mean, without talent at his disposal, I don't know that this is an indictment on Pablo at all, and I feel like they really like him over there. But do you feel like this is kind of a one-off, like throwaway season for our RSL with the inability of the front office to make significant talent additions?
Well, just to be clear, I do want to make sure that there's nuance to this conversation, that understanding, the predicament that the front office found themselves in, considering, it was pretty obvious that Ryan Smith was highly focused on the Jazz and Utah Hockey Club, or Mammoths, whatever we're calling it now. In the transition of the Millers, taking over a majority ownership, and David Blitzer and company kind of stepping down in their ownership, that there was going to be behind the scenes an infrastructure change, as well as probably concern about how much was invested. I think that's kind of incredibly obvious. And and to be clear, I'm not a team employee, I do some voiceover work and I do some hosting stuff, but my main gig is covering the U.S. men's national team and covering Major League Soccer. So I'm coming in from it from more of a national coverage perspective for MLS and Apple TV. There is a way around this, and it has to be very similar to what we saw with Chicho Arango 2 summers ago, where if you've identified your guy, get that deal over the line. And my hope is that with the Millers completely settling in, that there will be a significant amount of funds that are now made available now that everybody has clarity about what this looks like. Notoriously more easy during the summer transfer window to sign players or have better conversations because players are out of contract as opposed to coming out of contract and having to buy players out of contract. The cap hit is half of what it normally would be because effectively half the season. But similarly, what they did with Chicho Arango is get him in the market a good month before he's even eligible to step on the field. Get whoever you're deciding to have be a part of it, get them in market, get their family settled, get their kids registered for school, get the player training with the team, and then the moment that the availability and the paperwork is through on registration, get this player or players on the field, and hopefully they have a similar impact that Chicho did. You cannot afford to have what happened last year with Diogo, where whether it was the inability to get the deal done as early as it needed to be, the negotiation snags, snafus, Diogo never settled. And at that point, Pablo was really concerned with keeping the momentum and keeping the kind of starting 11 matchups in play while trying to get Chicho back on track after the suspension earlier in the summer. So there is a way around this, but to your point, yeah. I mean, if you are not really tight on your timelines, you could have actually even less than 8 games remaining because it's a dirty little secret right now that it's very difficult to get paperwork through, from a registration, work permit, visa situation than it ever has been before.
Give me a quick thought on Colorado. RSL Colorado tomorrow. Of course, rivalry match.
Yeah, Colorado 3 consecutive losses, a Jekyll and Hyde team, soft underbelly. They've got the ability to score some goals. Transition moments defensively haven't been good enough. Pressure on Zach Steffen in goal. Pressure on Chris Armas to get this right. They won the Rocky Mountain Cup last year. They celebrated it like it was a real trophy. Egotistically, RSL players, hopefully they understand that the fan base, it really matters to Real Salt Lake fans. So hopefully they put in a performance worthy of the fans' approval.
All right, brother. Well, I appreciate the time. Safe travels. And, let's chat soon. Thanks, dude.
Appreciate it, my man. And by the way, don't ever listen to Cam Ronnie. That dude.
No, that's a great point. Brian, you always offer great advice. Thank you, my friend.
Appreciate you, dude.
All right, the great Brian Dunseth, now with Apple TV, does some work for Turner Sports when the national team is playing as well. He exited Twitter during the last World Cup cycle, but I think you can find him on Instagram and Threads and wherever else. Brought to you today by Cortland Roofing, our re-roofing and roof repair experts with over 20 years of experience. Family owned and operated. Call Cortland Roofing today to get free rain gutters with any roof replacement. So if you need a replacement right now, roof replacement right now, if you're getting close to it, you should take advantage of this deal because free rain gutters saves you like $2,000, okay? So Cortland Roofing, re-roofing and roof repair experts, give them a call at 801-615-5560. That's 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560, or online at cortlandroofing.com. All right, we're back to the NBA playoffs and some Jazz lottery discussion with Dave McMenamin. He's going to join us coming up on the other side before we launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the program on a Friday afternoon. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, we are 90 minutes away-ish from Knicks Celtics in Midtown Manhattan. New York trying to advance to their first Eastern Conference Finals in 25 years, where they last played the Indiana Pacers, who are awaiting the winner of this series. Porter, were you awarded your weekly bonus by our texters? Were you given you were given the unanimous thumbs up that you deserve your weekly bonus?
I was.
So we have people texting that have not listened to the show this week.
I think so. I think that's the case here.
Were there any dissenting votes?
There was one that said I maybe might need it.
Okay.
One said I deserve your bonus also.
Well, then he's not going to see Matt Wright for going to play golf at Mountain Dell.
Yeah, he didn't get chosen.
It's a very exciting weekly bonus. It is an Uncrustable sandwich, so Porter will be rewarded for his hard work. Dave McMiniman, Friday afternoon. David, how are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you guys?
I'm good. Are you a fan of Uncrustables? Have I asked you this before?
Not that I'm aware of you asking me. Yeah, I am, absolutely. They have them at Laker games, actually, in the the fridge where they put the food for the people that can't eat whatever they're making in the hot bar. However, you got to go and grab one early because as soon as the Lakers dance team comes in, they descend upon that collection of Uncrustables like rabid animals, and they clear it out. So if I come to the arena early, I'll grab one, put it to the side, have it as a little snack, usually post game while I'm writing. But if I don't beat the Laker girls there first, there's no chance of getting one.
The biggest question is which flavor do the Lakers girls prefer? Is it grape? Is it strawberry? What's the preference?
So they clear it out of both. My preference is grape. My mom made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, put it in our sack of lunches growing up. There was no other jelly flavor other than grape. It was just Concord grape from Welch's. There was no other choice to get something else.
This is true. So Porter's weekly bonus, if he does a good job, is an Uncrustable sandwich. So I need to know, did he communicate with you in a professional manner, and did he call you on time?
I would venture to say that he may deserve two.
Whoa.
For his excellent communication this week.
Whoa.
Up that bonus.
Hey, we're working on a budget here, Dave. One Uncrustable per week, buddy, is all you get. All right, Dave, the lottery is fixed. It is rigged. The NBA hates the Jazz, and everybody hates Salt Lake. Your reaction?
Oh, man. I thought about you guys almost immediately. First I was fielding text, just the remarkable turn of events for the Mavericks. But, yeah, my thoughts turned to the Utah franchise. Now, listen, obviously not rigged. As crazy as it may seem, life is stranger than fiction. Kennedy had a secretary named Lincoln. Lincoln had a secretary named Kennedy, and they were assassinated 100 years apart. Like, that's crazy, right? That's actually crazy. What happened in the NBA draft lottery where even the teams with the best chance of ending up in the top three only had, 15% chance of getting there? Like, that still means 85% chance you're not going to get those picks. And we want to, put a positive spin on it. Hey, maybe AJ DeBance is going to be a better player than Cooper Flagg anyway. And Jazz fans can get to know him, watch him play in Provo this year for BYU, and hope that the lottery works out for them next year.
Yeah, and look, ultimately, you know me, I'm teasing to bring you in that way, but we do have a lot of very frustrated Jazz fans in the market. And, Dave, the bottom line is the one team that could not win the lottery in order to dissuade folks from putting on their tinfoil hat won the lottery, right? Like, that's how that went down. So the fact that Dallas gets one, I think, has a lot of people wondering, like, what's going on,
It's absolutely wild to comprehend, and I get it. I absolutely get it. However, it's just the way things went, and the NBA is not discouraged by the fallout, if you want to call it that, or the speculation, because the real goal of the lottery was to discourage teams from tanking. And the two teams that I think you could say, we're not judging at all, but let's just be realistic. The two teams in the lottery that clearly tanked this year, I guess there was three, right? So Charlotte, Washington, and Utah. None of those teams ended up with the top two picks. And that's kind of what the NBA wants to happen, because they don't want teams to do what Sam Hinkie in Philadelphia did and try to rig the system and basically set a blowtorch to your fan base for half of a decade while you try to take advantage of the lottery talent.
You know, it's interesting. Your guy, Tim Bontemps, Timmy Goodtime Bontemps, as he's known around these parts, cited a couple of front office sources celebrating the fact that the Jazz and the Wizards specifically did not get the number 1 overall pick. Do you feel like that's a consensus from teams around the league that actually are serious about winning when they're looking at teams that are clearly unserious about the endeavor, that they're glad that that approach does not get rewarded?
Yeah, I wouldn't speak to a consensus, but I can say that I spoke to a smattering of folks that look at it the same way. But listen, that I can say this without revealing my sources. They aren't in that cycle of their team currently. That the people that are sharing that opinion. It's easy to look your nose down at someone when you have the good fortune of being on a competitive team at the moment. But even the most competitive teams generally will go through some sort of downturn. Listen, it's a reminder of the stakes of choosing to go that direction. And again, like the best case scenario when it comes to your percentage chances is like 15, just below 18%, I think is what you can end up with. The Jazz end up with the 5th pick. Their most likely pick they were going to get going into the lottery, and the odds are published and there for everybody to see, is that they were going to end up with the 5th pick. So like that was, it actually was, it didn't buck the information that the team or the fan base had going into last week's lottery.
One more thing. If Mike Pence did the right thing, would the Jazz have the number 1 overall pick?
Next question.
I knew it. I knew you wouldn't take the bait. I've tried for years and you won't do it. All right, Dave, are you ready for my super crazy Jazz Spurs trade idea?
Yeah, I'd love it.
So San Antonio at 2 finds themselves in a really interesting spot because I think everybody feels like Dylan Harper is the second best prospect in the draft. But you look at San Antonio's roster and there's redundancy there if they decide to go Dylan Harper. Now, look, the problem with this trade scenario is there will be a lot of teams lined up to make an offer for 2 if San Antonio is willing to move it. But they make the trade for De'Aaron Fox. They have Stephon Castle, who's Rookie of the Year. And the Jazz could very much use Dylan Harper. It fills a need. And if he's as good as everybody says, do you think San Antonio entertains the notion of the Jazz sending 5 and Lauri Markkanen in exchange for 2, 14, and then Keldon Johnson and Harrison Barnes to make the contracts match? Do you think there's anything kind of generally speaking in that direction? Because we're hearing multiple reports that the Jazz will try to move up, but we know that one is off the table after Tim McMahon reported that Mavs ownership said, no, Nico, you can't trade it. We're keeping it, and we're drafting Cooper Flagg.
Right. I actually really like the idea, mostly because if you're going to go 2 with Harper, the redundancy factor, Castle, Rookie of the Year, you want to build there, and why wouldn't you want to build off of him versus like even if he was to continue his development with Harper there's the idea of like second guessing in the back of your mind, or let's say Harper does take off and now you have a distressed asset in Castle because he's starts wondering how valued am I. You get to remove that scenario by looking to trade the pick. Obviously getting 2 first-rounders is valuable, and Markkanen is a win-now-ready player. And listen, I think a reminder of what we saw this year in the playoffs, not only, of course, Victor Wembanyama not being able to finish the season because of his blood clot condition, but Dame Lillard goes down. Jason Tatum goes down. Like, if you feel like you have any semblance of a shot at a championship, go for it. And a player like Lauri Markkanen, they obviously have a veteran, De'Aaron Fox, that they traded for. You got Wemby, you got Castle. You can fill in around the other role players. Like, I think it's something that should be considered by El Jefe in San Antonio if that was ever offered.
So how much of the, and you just named a few, and Boston is an interesting situation to consider. and we'll get to the game in a moment. But even if Tatum stayed healthy, they were going to have some decisions to make with a new ownership group that probably did not do the luxury tax calculations until the papers were signed. And then they were like, wait, what? It's going to cost me what just to keep the roster? I mean, Bobby Marks, I think, calculated it's a $500 million luxury tax bill as this team continues to become expensive. So maybe they have a decision to make. Maybe it's Jaylen Brown. I don't know. Tatum's going to be on the shelf for an entire year. The Shams report about Giannis. There's Phoenix and Durant. How real do you think this kind of alleged reported big-time player movement in pro basketball will be this offseason?
Well, I'll start with Boston. Like, you pay a premium to get him $6.1 billion. Yeah, I think the number that Bobby reported is just under $500 million, which is a wild additional expense to take on in an annual basis. Normally, when you see people extend themselves to make a purchase like that, they want to start recouping their investment. Jrue Holiday has 2 years left on his deal. Kristaps Porzingis is an expiring contract. I expect them both to be moved. Absolutely, 100%, because of one, the redundancy factor of Kristaps. They've been able to win when he's missed time this year because of that strange viral infection, but more so because why would you pay that much money for a team that will be by default in a rebuild mode next year with Jason Tatum surely to miss pretty much the entire year with his recovery? And then the question becomes, Jaylen Brown at this stage of his career, does he want to commit a year for a team that is getting rid of assets and has its best player or second best player, depending on how you view Jaylen Brown, out for the year? Does this cause him to say, you know what, this is probably my time to go pursue what else is out there for me, and I would like to be moved? And then when you start to see those type of dominoes fall, that's when it becomes a crazy summer, because you're like, okay, Boston's going to be moving two players. That's interesting, Kristaps and Jrue Holiday. And Jrue Holiday's proven to be a difference maker for two different teams now in terms of being a championship-level team. That's interesting in itself. But then if it becomes, okay, Jaylen Brown wants out, and then if Giannis Antetokounmpo wants out, and Kevin Durant wants out, now you're talking about like 3 or 4 franchise-changing players on the market, and yeah, that can lead to all sorts of chaos beyond it. So I do think that we have a potential for a pretty busy summer with the landscape of the league changing a bit.
All right, moving on to, the playoffs because they're going on. I'm going to ask you about a couple of teams that already have stamped their ticket to the conference finals. Then we'll get to the action tonight and over the weekend. Let's start out east where Indiana just – and, it was really interesting listening to Kenny Atkinson after the game that, sealed the deal for Indiana. He basically acknowledged, like, they're better than we are right now. And they've got Indiana has so many like wings that want to fight you. Like Benedict Mathurin wants to fight everybody. So does Nesmith, Nembhard. I mean, they're going to be a tough out for anybody. What stood out most about the way the Pacers dispatched to the Cavs?
Yeah, I mean, they controlled that series. And listen, you can say there was unfortunate circumstances with Darius Garland and Evan Mobley, DeAndre Hunter all missing time, of course. I'm not so sure, though, had they been healthy the entire series, they would have beat the Pacers. The Pacers play with more of an edge. They played with certainly more offensive organization, and then they have wings that get into you. And Kendrick Perkins, my friend and colleague, did a hit earlier this week basically saying that the Cavs weren't tough enough. And sometimes that's hyperbolic and that doesn't really tell the story. But I do think that's part of what this Cavs team was missing is there's not enough grit there. You have basically a bunch of nice guys and you need some sort of mix to that group of guys who want to mix it up or guys who, are going to play better than the other team. And, I don't think that means that this Cavs team should be dismantled. But, I do think you look at like Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. Both are gentle giants. Can you have two gentle giants on your team, or do you? It's kind of hard to play two bigs in the playoffs as it is. Do you split them up? There's a handful of contenders that are looking for a big that would, offer you a lot for someone like Jared Allen, and then use those assets that you get from that trade either to find a guy with more of an edge or make that trade about finding the guy with more of an edge. I think it's a tweak that they need, not like an overhaul, obviously. And then you talk about Indiana as they sit in the catbird seat and watch the Knicks and Celtics play things out. Like, they should feel confident about their chance to make it back to the first NBA Finals appearance since Reggie Miller.
Moving over to a series that you covered well, a really good piece about Anthony Edwards. Minnesota, and you and I talked about this after OKC kind of established themselves as the best team in the West with a historic net and with the way they were playing. We would kind of revisit the topic every week, like who is their peer out West, and it seemed like every week that would change. Golden State gets Jimmy Butler. Is it Jimmy Butler? Of course, the Lakers get Luka. Can the Lakers make OKC uncomfortable? But over the final few weeks of the season, we did start to hone in on Minnesota a little bit. Obviously, the Steph factor is the Steph factor. And we'll get to Boston and New York in a minute. But as connected as Boston looked in Game 5 without Tatum, Golden State is just lost without Steph. They just are. The spacing is completely different. I was waiting to see playoff Jimmy. We never really did. That's probably more of a credit to Minnesota than anything as an indictment on Jimmy Butler. But what did you make of just how easily it seemed for Minnesota to take care of the Golden State Warriors? Sans, of course, Stephen Curry.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think there was the actual basketball blow to the Warriors of playing without Steph, which is significant because even at this stage of his career, you're talking about a guy who is going to draw double and triple team attention. He's a great playmaker. He can set other guys up, and he can just shoot over the defense a lot of times. So that's a major part of it. And then I think it was the mental blow of, like, they gave them their best shot in Game 3, didn't get it done, and like they recognized at that moment that, like, even the task of just trying to win one, to try to extend the series to get it to Game 6 so Steph would come back, was not going to really be possible. On the Minnesota side of things, it's a really good basketball team that is not unstoppable by any means. They had 21 turnovers in that Game 3. You can't be coughing the ball up that many times and expect to win a playoff game. And even in the closeout Game 5, that was a blowout. Ant had 7 turnovers. Like that type of stuff is going to hurt you as you get further along the line against a more disciplined team. And that's why their story could end in the Western Conference Finals against Denver or OKC, because I think both those teams have a little more structure to what they do. At the same time, though, they're deep, they're big, they're physical. They have a little bit of the chip on their shoulder from them flaming out last year against the Mavericks in the conference finals. And like, I think I'm kind of biased as I evaluate them because I have covered each of their games the last 2 rounds. Like, they look really good. And I covered them last year in the playoffs and the second round of the conference finals as well. They're a lot better than they were last year. Julius Randle is playing the best basketball of his career. Jaden McDaniels is a different player than he was last year. And last year, he looked like shades of Scottie Pippen. And Anthony Edwards is still the incredible, like, singular talent that is showing a little bit more recognition of defenses and making the hockey assists and making himself harder to guard. So I will most likely pick them. Like, if OKC was to win, I would say I think I will pick them in the next round. If Denver somehow beats OKC, then you're probably talking about the best player in basketball and Jokic thinking that he has another chance to get a ring, and that could be pretty tough. Plus, Denver will have the revenge factor because they lost last year to the Wolves.
Which combo of cities would lead to the most wailing and gnashing of teeth from media members that are mad that they have to travel to both cities?
It's Indiana, OKC. I mean, I do have Bryce Young is a friend of mine, and I've friends with some folks on the Indiana staff, and I feel bad about some of the texts I've already sent about that scenario to some folks in the media. It's just one of it is like actually a huge part of it. I should say it's not the city themselves; it's literally both of those cities. I won't be able to fly direct to. So that's it's kind of tough. Every single flight you're taking is a connecting flight for a duration of 2 weeks. It wears on you a little bit.
It does. No, it does. I just always enjoy the yearly airing of the grievances from media members that don't enjoy traveling to certain places. But anyway, all right, a couple things left before I set you loose. Let's start out this way, where we do have a Game 7 on Sunday. Man, this has been such a fun series. I don't know, man. I just feel like Denver's out of gas, and I just feel like Sunday could get ugly for OKC, but I do not want to bet against Nikola Jokic. What do you think happens Sunday, Game 7, Dave?
I'm leaning OKC just because Shea Denver was terrible in Game 6, and you figure he will – I respect him as a player. He's knocking on the door of his prime right now. He'll have the home crowd behind him with something to prove. I just think he'll have a much better game. And, part of Denver winning in Game 6 was Julian Strawther comes out of nowhere to have the game of his life. Like, those type of role players, they do that at home. They don't do it on the road. So that said, listen, I expect Jokic to be great. Aaron Gordon, we'll see. There was some talk about his calf bothering him last game. He's another guy, generally, I would say I know what I'm going to get out of him. He's going to be great. It's kind of like the swing players, Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray's capable of coming and dropping 35 and winning the game and making every shot they need in the fourth quarter. Jamal Murray's also capable of, kind of having a game where his shot's off, and that affects the type of defensive energy he brings on the other end. I just think OKC is more in line to have things go their way to advance. So I'll go OKC, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised if it's Denver.
Finally, David, the unbiased media member, basketball analyst in me, believes the New York Knicks should win a close game at home tonight in Midtown Manhattan. The long-suffering New York Knicks fan in me, as this team has let me down multiple occasions since I was 10 years old, has visions of Charles Smith missing 3 layups and Patrick Ewing missing a finger roll and John Stark shooting 3 of 18 and Pat Riley refusing to just even take Rolando Blackman off ice. And I could keep going. Anthony Mason's inbound pass to Greg Anthony. It was stolen by Reggie Miller. As you can tell, it's been a rough life for your boy cheering for the team that's going to play in an hour from right now. What happens tonight at MSG? Do my Knicks finally get it done?
I'll say that. They better get it done tonight.
Yep.
If it goes 7, I think they're going to win.
Mm.
I actually think they're going to do it. This is a very confident group. They will obviously have Madison Square Garden on fire. I think they're going to do it. They recognize that they wasted the opportunity in Game 5, but you got to give credit to Boston. Again, they had guys step up, like we're talking about Strawther for Denver at home, right? Cornette's not going to have that game on the road. If he does, God bless him, but he's not. And so I think we get – and then the Knicks also recognize, last year, they probably should have been in the conference finals if not for everybody getting injured at the same time. Right now they have health on their side. So I say go New York, go New York, go. And hopefully, when we talk about travel, hopefully I'm going to New York for the NBA Finals.
You know what? Now I'm cheering for the Pacers, just so you have to go to Indiana. I'm just playing. Dave, always a pleasure, my friend. Enjoy the games and have a great weekend, all right?
Yes, sir. You too. Thanks, man.
Dave McMenamin covers the NBA for ESPN. You can see him on all their TV coverage, then writes about a myriad of different things at MC10 is where you find Dave on Twitter. Stops by today courtesy of our friends at the Daybreak Home and Garden Show. Right around the corner, May the 16th through the 18th. It's at the ballpark in America First Square, 11111 Ballpark Drive in South Jordan. Check out the website, which is thebesthomeshow.com. So listen up, homeowners. Spring is in the air, and the birds are chirping, and the flowers are blooming. Is your home and backyard sanctuary ready to enjoy the coming season? Well, go check out the new Daybreak Home and Garden Show coming to the ballpark at America First Square May the 16th through the 18th. The new show will have something for every member of the family. Vendors galore, home, garden, and patio, free games for the kids, free day seminars, and hourly prizes. Come tour the exciting new tiny home from Boxable and tour the new Bees Ballpark. All vendor booths are indoors, so the weather will not be an issue. Get your tickets now. This will be the most exciting, fun, educational home show ever, and it's in Daybreak. Get tickets and information at thebesthomeshow.com. It is sponsored by our friends at Bullfrog Spas. All right, we're 1 hour away from tip at Madison Square Garden between the Knicks and the Celtics. We got 3 hours down on the show. We have 1 hour to go. The final hour of the program for the week and the day on a Friday comes your way next, right here on ESPN 700, 92 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. All right, let's get it. Drive at 5 time, Friday afternoon style, 7 minutes past the hour, 5 o'clock. The sun is actually trying to shine, has not shined very much today or quite frankly all week. We've got kind of chilly conditions over the weekend, maybe potentially some sunshine coming up tomorrow. It'll cool back down coming up on Sunday. And next week, after a little chilly Monday, looks really, really nice. June is on its way. Summer is on its way. But 5 o'clock hour of the program to get you home on a Friday afternoon gets rolling right now. Brought to you by our friends at Roosters. They're celebrating 30 years this summer. This month, their featured beer collabs between Roosters and Ogden Beer Company. Only at Roosters Brew Pub during May is for Mexico. Check out May is for Mexico and more anniversary fun on their social media at Roosters Brewing. 3 locations in Ogden, B Street, and Layton. The only brewery in Davis County are good friends at Roosters. 1 hour and 5 minutes away from tip-off at the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden in Midtown Manhattan, where the New York Knicks are looking to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since the year 2000, where they played, yep, you guessed it, the Indiana Pacers, who are awaiting the winner of tonight's, hopefully it's tonight's game. Awaiting the winner of the series. If Boston wins, they're going to go back to TD Garden for a Game 7 on Sunday. We have a Game 7 on Sunday already as a result of the Denver Nuggets getting the win last night. Denver and OKC will do battle on Sunday afternoon at 1:30 Mountain Time. The world of professional golf has their eyes on the PGA Championship, and this golf course has caused a lot of issues for some of the best players in the world. We'll see what happens over the weekend, of course. But I think Rory McIlroy, I was interviewing Dave McMenamin, so I didn't see this live. I think Rory McIlroy had to get up and down on 18 to save his bogey to make the cut and play the weekend, and it looked like he did. So the cut line settled at 2 over. Excuse me. The cut line moved while we were at break. Holy smokes. The cut line settled at 1 over par, and that's important. It does mean that Xander Schauffele and Rory McIlroy just barely made the cut. But what it also means is that Jordan Spieth will not play over the weekend. Jordan Spieth was looking to complete the major Grand Slam, a feat that's only been accomplished by 5 golfers in the history of the game. And wow, I cannot believe that move. That happened during our commercial break. As a result of the projected cut line at 1 over, unless something crazy happens as the groups are kind of finishing up right now, that means Jordan Spieth will not play over the weekend. Tony Finau was able to grab an eagle. I think that was on 15 or 16. I was trying to keep track while I was kind of doing the show to make sure that he stayed inside of the cut line as I am scrolling here to find Tony's name to kind of give you an update there. Yeah, Rory McIlroy had to get up and down to save bogey in order to make the cut on 18. He put his approach in the water. Tony is actually still on the course, but he did eagle 15. And he's 3 under, 2 under today, and he's through 17. So Tony will play over the weekend. 3 under par is good enough to tie him for 17. Johnny Vegas is your leader at 8 under par. Then Siwoo Kim and Matthew Pavone, in addition to Matt Fitzpatrick, at 6 under par. Max Homa and, of course, Scotty Scheffler are at 5 under par. So there you go. Some major golf championship, but, of course, a lot of attention on the NBA playoffs and some other stuff as well. So we'll catch a quick break during the 5 o'clock hour of the program. We're going to bring in Craig Bolerjack coming up. Talk to Bowler about the reaction of folks over there with the Utah Jazz after the lottery luck did not shine their way. Off-season plans for the Jazz already several reports surfacing that the Jazz are going to be very active to try to either move up in the draft or add some additional pieces to make sure maybe next year isn't as dire as this year was. Do I allow myself to get excited, to approach tonight with some optimism? I was listing the moments of holy bleep over my course of cheering for this damn basketball team since I was 10 years old. Charles Smith misses 3 layups against the Bulls. It was not a foul. Let's see. Anthony Mason basically throws it to Reggie Miller, who scores 8 points in 0.4 seconds or whatever it was. Patrick Ewing misses the finger roll against the Pacers. John Starks cannot shoot straight against the Rockets in the finals. I could keep going. I feel like we're due. I feel like Lady Luck is on our side tonight. I feel like the New York Knicks get it done in a close game at Madison Square Garden.
I feel like it's meant to be that the Pacers await us in the conference finals. I feel like, and listen, this is stuff that isn't real. Let's be clear. When it comes to sports, like coincidences, momentum, these are things that you can't really find. It's not real. It's not tangible, but it just feels like we're due. It feels like the Pacers being there is part of it. It feels like getting over the Celtics is part of it. And yeah, man, it's been a long, long time. I go back to the 1 year the Knicks were the 1 year the Knicks were good during my fandom when we should have beat the Pacers in a playoff series. And if you remember, Spence, there was a foul call on Iman Shumpert where he literally maybe got a hair on the elbow of either Danny Granger or Paul George, and it changed the series, man. And then there was another one where there was a no call on a J.R. Smith jumper. We'll maybe leave that for the folks who want to go and revisit it on YouTube. But it has left a sour taste in my mouth since that game against the Indiana Pacers. And I want to get back there. I want to get back to a place where we can have some fun. The Eastern Conference Finals would certainly be that.
Also a big game on the hockey side of things. The Maple Leafs will try to even it up against the Panthers. That game is in Sunrise. Florida will try to advance to the conference finals. They lead that series 3-2. Here's some NHL on our station. You can hear the Knicks and the Celtics on the Fan. So let's get out of here and watch some playoff action tonight. Porter, what comes our way on a Monday edition of the show?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier on the show, you talked a little bit about Bobby Marks' piece. I think it was in the Dave McMenamin interview. Bobby will stop by the program on a Monday talking NBA Draft Combine, and, of course, the offseason ahead, maybe some playoffs as well. Tom Haberstroh doubles up on the NBA Daily Assist. We will recap the RSL weekend that was. Of course, they are in action against their rival Colorado, so we'll have a standout from the Real Salt Lake weekend. And then Tony Parks is visiting once again. We've got some stuff going on with the Bees next week. We'll tease when he gets here. So 2 weeks in a row, we're blessed with his presence.
All right, there you go. We'll say goodnight. Special thank you today to Howard Beck, Craig Bowlerjack, Paul Pugmire, Brian Dunseth, and Dave McMenamin. Very busy show with a lot of stuff that you guys can find online if you missed it in real time. So go to our website. It's ESPN700sports.com. Download our mobile app. Take us on the go. Best and easiest way to listen to the station. Then finally, for what we do in our space, our podcast page is where to go. It's called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in our comments, and give us all the stars. It actually helps out. For Porter, I'm Spence. Say goodnight. Have a great Friday evening. Have a great weekend. Be good to yourself and be good to each other. We'll talk to you on a Monday show. As always, you can find it right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network.